trouble with the coal union and her economy went into the tank. She had her little war with the Falklands, and that bailed her out. You know, it boosted her popularity. Ronald Reagan saw that and said, "Oh, really?" And so when the Marine barracks was blown up in Lebanon and 200 plus Marines died, he needed a distraction, so he invaded Grenada. And then George Herbert Walker Bush had his little war, you know, in Iraq. And then George W. Bush even told Mickey Herskowitz, his biographer, that if he got elected, he was going to have a little war in Iraq, but he was going to make it last until the election so he'd get reelected. This is a Republican thing, you know, these little wars. And it looks to me like Trump is fixing for a little war with Venezuela. My suspicion is it won't be a little war once it starts, because Venezuela is going to fight back. Number one, Venezuelans are very nationalistic. But here's my scenario. Trump starts his little war with Venezuela. Putin says, okay, this is the moment, and he uses like a tactical nuke to take out Kyiv or something, or he just, you know, launches a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. China, at that same moment, probably in coordination between Xi and Putin, invades Taiwan. And Netanyahu says, oh, now look at this. Everybody's all tied up. I can do, and he starts bombing Iran, and we're in World War III. Am I crazy?
Yeah. Let's just put it this way. You have elements of sanity involved in what you've said that are all true and can happen. I would remove the Putin nuking Kyiv. They want to see this done on a large scale to where the United States now becomes Russia's ally and assist in the collapse of Ukraine. What Russia needs more than anything
is a break.
The effect
is the same. Right.
Yeah, well, sort of. But, you know, when you say Russia would invade, them in what army? They have no army that is even intact. Their morale is broken. The Ukrainians actually have a very good chance of breaking through. China invading Taiwan, that's given. I mean, Pete Hegseth just a few weeks ago during his Pentagon speech had talked up to the Joint Staff about withdrawing from the Indo-Pacific and Europe and eliminating Africa Command. And essentially, and then turning the U.S. armed forces against, quote unquote, the homeland threats, which means American citizens. Right. China can't believe their luck. The United States is withdrawing from the world and essentially living out a 1939 fantasy. So China definitely is going to invade Taiwan, and the United States is not going to defend it. But with regards to Venezuela, Trump's entire strategy on Venezuela comes from a Tom Clancy novel, A Clear and Present Danger. And he wants to put in and has ordered the CIA to put in clandestine services personnel, special operations personnel. We have an armada off of Venezuela right now that is just as big as the armada that was off Yemen when we were doing active cruise missile attacks, bombardments of Yemen, minus a full-scale aircraft carrier battle group. If a carrier battle group shows up down there, then we're definitely going to war with Venezuela. The problem is they have a multi-100,000 man military that's pretty good. Right. And we can give them an economic stranglehold. But then again, their relationships with China, Russia, and Iran could result in some nasty things. I mean, Iran could have already transshipped them anti-ship missiles.
Yeah, and it's by the way, we have 40 seconds till we hit a hard break here. I can't stop. And also, I think it's important to note that I understand Venezuela has 4 times more oil than Saudi Arabia.
In terms of global reserve, yes. But, you know, so it's an economic prospect. Trump wants...
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Storm is Here, An American Crucible by Luke Mogelson. This is from the introduction. Hoping to stave off an encroaching despair on the morning of January 7th, 2021, I left my hotel in Washington, D.C. and took a taxi to the Lincoln Memorial. I was looking for sanctuary, and an open-air chamber designed to resemble a temple seemed as likely a place to find it as any. I'd been there once or twice before, passing between the marble columns. You weren't humbled into silence as much as welcomed by it. When I arrived this time, however, the monument was closed. Squad cars were pulling up, officers expelling a mob. Many of the people wore red MAGA hats and Trump 2020 shirts. I asked someone what had happened. It seemed that a woman had been posing for pictures with a Gadsden flag, "Don't tread on me," below a hissing snake on a yellow field, when an officer advised that such displays were not allowed. A fracas had ensued, and now the Trump supporters converged at the bottom of the steps. The same steps from which, in 1963, Martin Luther King delivered his "I Have a Dream" speech, and the crowd then began calling the officers Nazis, Marxists, and pigs. Young men in blazers waved their middle fingers. "Christ is king," they chanted. "Aren't we the pussies?" a little bald man asked. "Honestly, we're not overrunning them?" "That's when they start executing people," said a woman in her 30s, glaring hatefully at the police. It occurred to me that some of the officers impassively absorbing this abuse probably had friends in the hospital. Less than 24 hours earlier, I had watched Donald Trump tell a similar, though much larger mob assembled on the far end of the reflecting pool that extended behind us, quote, "If you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore," end quote. Thousands of people, many armed with bats, clubs, whips, and other rudimentary weapons, had proceeded to march up the National Mall. At the Capitol, they had wounded around 180 law enforcement agents, smashed through doors and windows, and frantically hunted for politicians determined to sabotage the peaceful transition of power. Some carried nooses, barked racial epithets, assaulted journalists, and called for the vice president to be lynched. On the Senate floor, I watched Trump supporters ransack desks and steal confidential documents. A bare-chested man in a horned headdress wielding a spear pronounced Mike Pence an effing traitor. Then he led the rioters in prayer. An officer who suffered a stroke after being maced would later die. Now it was not the police, but the Trump supporters who were outraged. Once again, they believed they'd been wronged. Once again, their sense of injury was blistering. The woman with the Gadsden flag was a pastor from Los Angeles. "I know that had to be Antifa," she said of the attack on the Capitol. "I know it did, because everyone here," she gestured at the livid crowd berating the police, "there's such a spirit of community." She began to weep. "How dare they?" she demanded of the officers. "What is wrong with this country? This is not my America. I don't understand." That made two of us. I could think of only one question to ask. Where do we go from here? The pastor wiped her tears. Her suffering was vast. "I will tell you this," she sobbed. "I will not turn the other cheek to what's not right. This is not right. This is not right." The first epidemic I reported on was in West Africa in 2014. Although Ebola was far more deadly and contagious than COVID-19, the international response is inadequate. Liberia's largest slum, a dense warren of crude squatter dwellings in a narrow peninsula that jutted into the Atlantic from downtown Monrovia, was a formidable early hot zone. Below a canopy of rusty sheet metal, some 80,000 denizens lacked running water, relieved themselves in the cramped gaps between walls, and repurposed detritus as a bulwark against eroding riverbanks. As the virus wiped out whole families, the Liberian military sealed off the encampments with ramparts and barbed wire. Gunships patrolled the coast. Crime spiked. Panic spread. Soldiers fired on people trying to escape. The community looked doomed. After 10 days, emissaries from the slum prevailed on the government to end the blockade. In exchange, they agreed to implement a suite of precautions, identifying and isolating sick people in their homes, tracking down their recent contacts, and vigilantly monitoring each individual for a period of 3 weeks, the maximum amount of time that the virus was known to incubate before manifesting symptoms. Normally, all this should have been the responsibility of medical professionals and epidemiologists. In the slum, though, the job fell to locals. Against most expectations, within a month, the Ebola outbreak had been contained. Monrovia was not an aberration. In the absence of rescue by the world and their own governments, which were among the poorest on the earth, West Africans proved remarkably adept at helping one another to survive. Neighborhoods mobilized, healthcare workers volunteered, secluded villages formed ad hoc task forces to oversee sanitation, quarantines, and mandatory social distancing. Education was crucial. Initially, conspiracy theories abounded. Some West Africans embraced a rumor that the virus was a ploy to solicit foreign donor money. Spiritual healers proffered metaphysical explanations for the vagaries of death and illness. In one remote hamlet I visited in Sierra Leone, the chief had been told that somewhere a commercial plane had crashed. For every passenger who died, a villager must as well. The book, The Storm is Here, by Luke Mogelson.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Always too eager for the future. We pick up bad habits of expectancy. Something is always approaching every day. Till then we say, watching from a bluff, the tiny, clear, sparkling armada of promises draw near. How slow they are, how much time they waste, refusing to make haste. Yet still they leave us holding wretched stalks of disappointment. For though nothing balks, each big approach leaning with brasswork prinked, each rope distinct. Flagged in the figurehead, with golden tits arching our way, it never anchors. It's no sooner present than it turns to the past, right to the last. We think each other will heave to and unload all good unto our lives. All we are owed for waiting so devoutly and so long, but we are wrong. Only one ship is seeking us, a black sail unfamiliar, towing at her back, a huge and birdless silence in her wake. No waters breed or break. That's What's Next by Philip Larkin. His is a dimmer view, the ultimate What's Next. My question today on What's Next Wednesday is, in fact, what is next now for us, for our community, for our discussions? What is worthy of our attention? Over the last couple weeks, it has basically been two things. The elections that happened last week, and that was just last week, and the shutdown of the shutdown that is happening essentially now. The question now is, to where is the page turning? I'd be interested in your thoughts. I've got some, and I will share them. The call number here is 202-808-9925. 202-808-9925. What is worthy of our attention? Where should we put our focus? Where should our activists be working? What maybe elections should we be focused on? What topics? What do we need to be particularly watchful of that the governing party that governs all three branches of government and controls to too great a degree the media apparatus and financial apparatus of the country? What do we be watchful of that they may be doing that there needs to be some awareness of, maybe even resistance to? 202-808-9925. Here's one thing. Adelita Grijalva is expected to be sworn in today, new member of Congress. That was held up because of the shutdown, because Congress wasn't in session. Now they're coming in session to pass this bill to keep the government going. She will be sworn in, so it says here. Something else we know. We now know that there were additional emails between Epstein and Michael Wolff that include discussion about Trump. We can take, and just about everybody's reporting on this, so I can pick just about any national or international news outlet. I will choose PBS. Late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein specifically referenced his relationship with President Donald Trump in writing before Trump was elected to office and in the run-up to the 2020 election, according to newly obtained emails released Wednesday by the House Oversight Committee. The emails, some of which were shared directly with PBS News, are among 23,000 documents Epstein's estate released to the committee. Ranking member Representative Robert Garcia wrote in a news release. They include correspondence between Epstein and his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is herself serving a 20-year prison sentence for involvement in Epstein's sex trafficking ring. And we know that she is trying to get her sentence commuted or stay in a more fancy place. The email, moving on. And here are some of the emails. The winner quote, this includes the winner quote. Here's one from GMAX. And the response, I have been thinking about that. This from Jeffrey Epstein to GMAX. I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Blank victim spent hours at my house with him, and he has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc. I'm 75% there. That sounds like he's 75%. I mean, I'm now making this up. How would you interpret that? One interpretation might be that I'm 70% there. Could that mean that he's 75% there towards having that dog bark? And the fact that a victim spent hours at not Jeffrey Epstein's, house with him presumably meaning the person in the previous sentence, was Donald Trump. That is the first email that's been released. Here is the second. It takes a second to load it. Forgive me. Why is it taking so? Oh, maybe this will, if I scroll down, forget this is good radio when I have to show what I'm doing by trying to read these emails. They are very hard to load, apparently. Here is another one from G Vacation to Michael Wolff. G Vacation is Jeffrey Epstein, E Vacation, apparently. Victim, blacked out. Mar-a-Lago, also redacted. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. So it doesn't say what he asked Ghislaine to stop doing precisely, but it says here, of course, and it says here, he knew about the girls. That is probably the most important, as being interpreted as probably the most important line in here. Let me scroll down to one more. This is advice from Michael Wolff. This is Jeffrey Epstein, jeevacation@gmail.com was his email address. If we were able to craft an answer for him, here's Michael Wolff. I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards. Interesting that Michael Wolff knew that. Interesting that Michael was sharing that information. And Jeffrey Epstein says, if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? It doesn't say they could craft an answer for him, but it suggests that Jeffrey Epstein thinks there's enough communication that they might be able to. If we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? Michael Wolff, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or the House, that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. So it's Mike Wolff saying, go ahead and let Trump say what he wants to say, because whatever it is could be useful to you. That is interesting. Those are the emails. And that's a big piece of what's next, I think. That is what has not been talked about while the government has been shut down. That is what Donald Trump will inevitably what's going to happen today. And it probably happened during the show. Just watch. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. But if I'm wrong by the first time, Trump's going to do or say something crazy. He's going to do something that's going to be really objectionable. That's going to require response from people like the people who listen to this program, require condemnation by members of the media and members of the progressive resistance. That's his move. So take a breath, look around, and think about what else is going on. What's next is What's Next Wednesday. Thom Hartmann Show. I'm Jeff.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Calls are already lighting up, I should say. 202-808-9925. What is next? And we are back. I do want to get people's perspective on, I have a few questions, but maybe the answers are too obvious, so maybe I can think of a better question. One question is, why does the Epstein stuff matter? Does it matter? Is it just driving by a car crash? And like, oh, look at that. And it involves sex and rape of underage girls, forgive that term. Trigger warning on topics like these. And therefore, you got to slow down the car and look at the car wreck. Or is there something at stake? That's a question I have. Does it matter? And if it matters, why does it matter? And also, what should be done about it? If it matters, if it doesn't matter, then maybe we should move on. If it does matter, what should we do about it? I'll come back to that right after the break. Let's go to Don from Pittsburgh, Kansas, I think. Don, you are on the air.
Hi. I wanted to talk a little bit about, activities beyond just holding protests and voting and everything. I mean, we're really past that point in this country. Mm-hmm. And there's a publication, a Substack called The Existentialist Republic, and he's published about 60 articles, and he really goes into this, very well documented. And like he says, we need to stop paying them. Well, Tom has poo-pooed that, but, you do it the way they did it back in the big rent strikes. You put the tax payments into escrow. And there's ways to do that, apparently. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a financier. But, hold the tax payments in escrow, then start charging federal facilities market rates for everything they use in these states. Mm-hmm. Right now, they get the stuff for free. They don't have to do that. Yeah. Bill them and take the money out of the escrow accounts. Apply federal standards to their payments. They take 18 months to process stuff. Well, the states should do that. And one of the key points that he makes is that you can't, 5 or 10 of the blue states need to do this together. Mm-hmm. And actually, they're cooperating behind the scenes. They have weekly meetings, and they're talking about what to do, because the intelligent people realize that we're in big trouble.
Yeah. So I'll agree with the first piece, but offer a different thought on the second. So that it's got to go past protesting and voting, not only yes, but heck yes. That, to me, does not reduce the need for protesting and voting. It means more of that and more of that and more of that and more of that and more of that. And any foreign or AI or Republican bot that gives you the line, oh, what are you going to do, just vote harder? That is all that was, when you heard that phrase, was a voter suppression tactic to try to seem like it was a lefty message to try to keep people who are pro-democracy people from voting. So heck yes on the voting and heck yes on the protesting. We want to get from 7 million people to 8 million people to 9 million people to 10 million people to 11 million people, 12 million people, and everybody here should be bringing friends and going, and that includes me. Okay.
And I agree, but I'm not saying not to vote. I vote.
No, but I want to respond to the other. I want to respond to the other piece. Here's what I would say is distinct from and I guess I haven't formed a strong view. I haven't formed a view on the kind of federal taxation strike idea. I have done by states. I have formed a view that I think we need interstate compacts to start protecting the social safety net, that governors, that attorneys general, that secretaries of state, that legislatures need to be not only behind the scenes, but actively working to make sure that some of the things that are being torn asunder are actually being built up, and that will be through interstate compacts. I think that's going to be really important. We'll be back.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com. So back when Donald Trump debated Kamala Harris, he was asked about world leaders and whatnot, and he went off on this thing praising a guy named Viktor Orban and saying he's a tough guy, he's smart, he's the prime minister of Hungary, and he loves me, basically. So who is Viktor Orban? Well, it turns out Viktor Orban is a guy who took over Hungary in a regular election, the prime minister, and then turned it into basically a neo-fascist paradise for right-wingers. All the media is now controlled by right-wing oligarchs. He's packed the courts. He's changed the Constitution so that they have things like gerrymandering and voter suppression, so he always wins every election. He throws people in jail for criticizing him, even on Facebook. I mean, this is what Hungary has become. Fox News loves it. Tucker Carlson did his show from there for a week, and that's what Donald Trump wants to do to America. You can read the whole thing over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Trump's New Hero, the strong man who crushed democracy in Hungary. Check it out.
We are back. It's What's Next Wednesday, and something that is on my mind, question I want to ask y'all. Does the Epstein stuff matter? Does it matter? Is it just people who are looking for salacious looky-loos material? Or does it matter? And if it matters, why does it matter? I'd be interested in your thoughts. Call the number here is 202-808-9925. Does the fact that the president's Confederates have been working with Ghislaine Maxwell to get her a nicer prison stay, that she is trying to get a pardon, does that matter? Does it matter that victims have come forward? Does it matter that one of those victims is now dead? Does it matter that Epstein himself is dead? Does it matter that emails between Epstein and Michael Wolff say that Trump knew about, according to them, Trump knew about the girls? Does it matter that Epstein was considering their strategy about how to deal with that becoming a press topic? Does it matter that Trump on multiple occasions is in photographs with this guy as close as you would be if you were friends? Does it matter that he has been described as the Donald Trump and Epstein were best friends? Does it matter that that has been said? Does it matter that Donald Trump has been reported that he wrote a funny and ribald letter to the guy, birthday card, that talked about the secret that they share? Does it matter that the Republicans have been reticent to share information, to release the files that they ran on over and over again, saying, this is the big thing. This is the big thing. And then they get into power and they shut it down. Does it matter? And if it matters, why does it matter? Why do you think it matters? If it doesn't matter, well, we can talk about that in the same way, slightly different, because people were really harmed. But, with the Mellon Blue Diamond just sold for $25 million. That's $7 million less than it was sold 11 years ago when it was sold for $32 million. This was the big blue diamond, almost 10 carats, that was owned by Bunny Mellon. Yes, the same Mellon family that's now a major source of right-wing money. I can't speak of Bunny herself or Bunny's children. I get the Mellons confused. But Bunny had a really nice diamond. When she died, it sold for $32 million, and now it only sold for $24 million, and that's 11 years later, 25.6, I believe, U.S. And why did it go down in value by $7 million? That's interesting if you're in the blue diamond business, which I'm not. So we can talk about the Epstein stuff like it's just a story, interesting to talk about, maybe connect with some trends. Why do I think the Blue Diamond story matters? Maybe it doesn't, although diamonds are an interesting racket. And they are, and it's indicative of, when asked for the analysis, well, the global financial mood is a little bit down, including because of tariff stuff. Happy to talk about tariff stuff if you want. So maybe the Epstein stuff is just a story because people got to fill time. People got to get clicks. What does it matter? And if it matters, why does it matter? And if it matters, what should be done about it? What should be done about it? What are the steps that should be taken, either to find out what was going on, what accountability should be applied, what are the steps to be taken by House Democrats, what are the steps that should be taken by House oversight, what are the steps that should be taken by this White House, what are steps that should be taken by the Department of Justice? If you were worried about being prosecuted and you wanted to make sure that the top legal officials in the country, that the top law enforcement agency in the country was less likely to pursue you for crimes, who would you appoint? Would that person look, sound, and act like Kash Patel? Would you pick an attorney general that until they became attorney general was not deemed to be qualified to be that? Would you pick loyalists and cronies and Confederates? And does that matter? Mention your view. Does it matter? Why does it matter? And if it matters, what should be done about it? We'll be back right after this. This is Thom Hartmann Show. I'm Jeff. This is your show, and thanks for being with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
It is the number, 202-808-9925. We'll get to your calls right after this. Does it matter?
Hi, for our book club today, we're reading from Bernie Sanders' new book, Where We Go From Here, 2 Years in the Resistance. This is from the introduction. During my campaign for president in 2016, I stated over and over again that the future of our country was dependent upon our willingness to make a political revolution. I stressed that real change never occurs from the top down. It always happens from the bottom up. No real change in American history, not the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the gay rights movement, the environmental movement, or any other movement for social justice has ever succeeded without grassroots activism, without millions of people engaged in the struggle for justice. That's what I said when I ran for president. That's what I believe now. That's what I've been working to accomplish over the last several years. At a time of massive and growing income and wealth inequality, as our nation moves closer and closer to an oligarchic form of society, we need an unprecedented grassroots political movement to stand up to the greed of the billionaire class and the politicians they own. And the good news is we're making progress. People in every region of our country are standing up and fighting back against the most dishonest and reactionary president in the history of the republic. In state after state, they're also taking on establishment politicians who are more concerned about protecting their wealthy campaign contributors than they are with the needs of the middle class and the working people they're supposed to represent. We're making progress when millions of people in every state in the country take to the streets for the Women's March in opposition to Trump's reactionary agenda. We're making progress when an unprecedented grassroots movement elects a young African American as mayor of Birmingham, Alabama. We're making progress when tens of thousands of Americans turn out at rallies and town hall meetings to successfully oppose the Republican effort to throw 32 million people off health insurance. We're making progress when governors and local officials announce in response to student demands tuition-free public colleges and universities. We're making progress when over the past 2 years, hundreds of first-time candidates of every conceivable background run for school board, city council, state legislature, and Congress, and many of them win. The good news is that the American people are far more united than the media would like us to believe. They get it. They know that over the past 40 years, despite a huge increase in worker productivity, the middle class has continued to shrink while the very rich have become very much richer. They know that for the first time in the modern history of the United States, our kids will likely have a lower living standard than us. The bad news is that instead of going forward together, demagogues like Trump win elections by dividing us. The bad news is that too many of us are getting angry at the wrong people. I was not an immigrant picking strawberries it was not an immigrant picking strawberries at $8 an hour who destroyed the economy in 2008. It was the greed and illegal behavior of Wall Street. It was not transgender people who threw millions of workers out on the street as factories were shut down all across the country. It was profitable multinational corporations in search of cheap labor abroad. Our job, for the sake of our kids and grandchildren, is to bring our people together around a progressive agenda. Are the majority of people in our country deeply concerned about the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that we are experiencing? You bet they are. Do they believe that our campaign finance system is corrupt and enables the rich to buy elections? Overwhelmingly they do. Do they want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage and provide pay equity for women? Yes, they do. Do they think that the very rich and large corporations should pay more in taxes so that all of our kids can have free tuition at public universities and colleges? Yep. Do they believe that the United States should join every other major country and guarantee health care as a right? Yes, again. Do they believe climate change is real? You got to be kidding. Are they tired of the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, falling apart at the seams with roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, airports, rails, levees, and dams either failing or at risk of failing? Who isn't? Further, a majority of the American people want comprehensive immigration reform and a criminal justice system that is based on justice, not racism or mass incarceration. Today, what the American people want is not what they're getting. In fact, under Republican leadership in the House, Senate, and White House, they are getting exactly the opposite of what they want. The American people want a government that represents all of us. Instead, they're getting a government that represents the interests and extremist ideology of wealthy campaign contributors. They want environmental policies that combat climate change and pollution and that will allow our kids to live on a healthy and habitable planet. Instead, they're getting executive orders and legislation that push more fossil fuel production, more greenhouse gas emissions, and more pollution. They want a foreign policy that prioritizes peacemaking. Instead, they're getting increased military spending and growing hostility to our long-term democratic allies. They want a nation in which all people are treated with dignity and respect and where we continue our decades-long struggle to end discrimination based on race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and nation of origin. Instead, they have a president who seeks to win political support by appealing to those very deep-seated prejudices. During the last several years, I've worked hard in Washington, but I've also traveled to 32 states in every region of our country. I've seen the beauty, strength, and courage of our people. I've also seen fear and despair. I've talked to people with life-threatening illnesses in West Virginia who worry about what will happen to them or their loved ones if they lose the health insurance that keeps them alive. I've talked to young immigrants, dreamers in Arizona who are frightened to death about losing their legal status and being deported from the only country they have ever known. I talked to a young single mom in Nevada worried about how she can raise her daughter on $10.45 an hour. I talked to retirees and older workers in Kansas who are outraged that as a result of congressional legislation, they could lose up to 60% of the pensions they paid into and were promised as deferred compensation for a lifetime of hard work. Bernie Sanders, where we go from here.
Did you know that every weekday we send out an email before the show giving you all the topics coming up so you can be fully informed and ready to interact with our program? Or that after the show we send out Sue's Stack, a list of every topic I've discussed along with clickable hot links to every source of information I've shared with you on the air? It's all completely free and available over at thom.tv, THOM.tv. Check it out.
And we are back. The question I asked was, does it matter? Take a couple calls. Let's go to William from Kirkwood, Missouri. You are on the air, William. William, can you hear me? All right, let's try Mike. Mike, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
Yes, I think it's important that this Epstein file be released. Not doing so offers implied consent to billionaires, multimillionaires to continue the Epstein behaviors. Mm-hmm. That's one of the items. The second item is by not releasing that Epstein file, it also portrays to all the victims and future victims that when they are finding themselves in similar circumstances, our society at large in general will do nothing to protect them against the billionaires' pedophilia rings. The other thing is the GOP, grand old pedophilers, group of pedophilers, however you want to acronym that out, is the fact that MAGA Mike doesn't need a vote to release the entire Epstein files. It's currently fully within the individual's capabilities to do so, but the group of pedophilers, grand old pedophilers, insist that they get to perpetrate rape onto minors and victims, helpless individuals. And by not releasing the files, it's implied consent that that behavior is permitted to perpetuate throughout our society. It's time that those Epstein files be released, that the multi-billionaires, millionaires that were involved be held accountable. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, by not releasing them, these individuals are still amongst us in our society. Mm. Is this a society of laws for just the non-rich? Or is it a society full of laws to protect the rich people, such as Elaine Maxwell, being catered to in that golf course prison system, which isn't even entitled to be there? That person isn't supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's important that the group of pedophilers get in front of this issue. The grand old pedophilers, it's time that their pants, they've already pulled them down themselves. It's time for the world to see their bare asses.
All right, Mike, thanks for the call. I appreciate it. I didn't think the bulk of what you said was amusing, but the last part I found just a little amusing. Forgive me. What I heard you say was it matters because it sends a message to victims, and it matters because if there is, in fact, it appears to be the power network that worked with Jeffrey Epstein, that kept this secret, that built some of their power. And I will tell you part of the reason this has bothered me that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about, which is I actually think that the secret that they shared, to quote the letter that was published with Donald Trump's signature, the secret that they shared, I worried was in fact kind of a little code word for a power network, for a way that they would introduce people to that power network, a way that they knew they could be accountable to one another, and a way that they all, by sharing that secret, were part of that little club, and that little club traded favors beyond that dark and horrible favor, and it included financial favors. It was part of Jeffrey Epstein's strategy to win friends and influence people in a horrific way, and to be able to hold something over them, but also dangle something to them. And that little club wielded influence, and that's one reason one could argue that maybe it matters. But I would ask all y'all, I do want to ask about this and would be interested in, the call-in number is 202-808-9925. Is it just clickbait? Should we just turn the page? Should what's next be, I don't know, something else about the Blue Diamond or some other darn thing? Looking at, are they going to arrest everybody who stole art, who stole gems from the Louvre? Right? Is this that kind of story, or is there something deeper that matters? And if there's something deeper that matters, what is it? Why does it matter? And if there is, what should we do about it? Interested in your thoughts. Lynn from North Bend, you're on the air.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, great. Okay, I have three different things. I'll go through them fairly quick if that's okay. Number one, YouTube.
Three is a
Sean,
lot. Three is a lot, Lynn, but go ahead. Let's get started.
They all relate. They all relate. Okay. Sean Atwood, interviews with Kevin Annett, author of 20 books. He's about the dark side of the Vatican, the history of the Vatican and the Mormon churches with the takeover of the indigenous cultures, and the start of the dark side of Big Pharma and human trafficking with the pedophiles, Epstein, Trump, Netanyahu, and Putin. Anyway, and the Vatican has over $80 trillion. So that was one. Okay, number two is there's a petition on change.org. I'm an Oregon change agent. I was given my certificate from Governor Kitzhaber, medical doctor. I was a registered nurse in 2 countries. Anyway, so I put on this petition, change.org, and it's legislation, CARES Act, pay people to care, stop warfare systems. Okay, that's the second one. Third one, removetheregime.com. Really important. Jessica Denson with Al Green, John Bonifaz, and Lev Parnaz, and lots of veterans are involved. And it's November 20th, 21st, 22nd. Removetheregime.com. Okay, and citizensimpeachment.com. Okay, thank you.
Lynn, thanks for your activism. Let's go to David from Tyler, Texas. David, you're on the air.
Oh, well, that was quick. I was just making notes about what to say, but the main thing I want to say is to know your audience, who you're talking to. You know, if it's a neighbor, if it's, I'm in the Democratic Party here, and right now, the city council has allowed ICE to operate in Smith County. And all of a sudden, not realizing, but letting a lot of friends know, it spread like wildfire. And there's a lot of people almost every day out protesting in downtown town and about ICE. And Abbott is coming to town today, and the first thing I did was let everybody know that I could where he's going to be at a certain time, and let that protest focus on him. But, you know, if you're on a city council, everything I think is important locally, and knowing what's being discussed, like banning books around here and things like that, that stir people up, you know. And women's rights, I think some of the macho male, you know, wives, I tell them that, you know, it's what you really think, and this is your chance, because your husband's not going to come in there and see how you vote.
Yeah.
So
well, thank you for the activism. I did the screener put you through, and saying you thought the Epstein files hit a nerve with the Republicans. I did want to hear that. That's the topic we're talking about right now that I wanted to ask you about. Do you have a view on that? It's not required, but if you had a view on it, I'd be open to it.
Yes. Well, and that's part of whether we understand why or not. Republicans are stirred up about the Epstein files and the hypocrisy of it all, and the national Christianity side of things. It's knowing what touches a nerve with those people. And I email a lot of them, and that I don't see, but I know from other situations. And the Epstein file, that's not the surprising or the main issues for me, but it is for them for some reason. Yeah, the hypocrisy of it all.
So that's one.
That's
another.
Knowing your audience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, David. I appreciate that. And so adding to the list, the message it sends to victims is important. The power network that there is still around to share the secret. And what you just said is because it matters to a bunch of people itself. The fact that it matters to a bunch of people means it matters to a bunch of people. And that is, and that's important. And you also said the hypocrisy. Appreciate it, David. I'm going to keep it moving. Joy from Marion, Illinois, you are on the air.
Hello. Yes, I think it's very important to expose these men who were having sex with young girls, 14 to 16 years old or younger. That to me is sick and immoral. And a lot of us have children. And if you've had children, you know that is crazy. And this sex ring should be exposed, and the men should be charged, even though I know they're important. But, I mean, this sex ring, it continues, I'm sure. And Trump's followers, there are many Christians who voted for Trump, and they should know the truth. Mm-hmm. I've read many books about him, David C. Johnson, and he exposes everything about Trump. He's from New York, and he's known Trump since he came down the escalator at Trump Tower. Mm-hmm. And if people had just read 2 of his books, and I do believe he was truthful.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate that, Joy. So you don't think it's overstated. You think it's pretty important.
Yes, very much.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that view. Another question I've got relatedly is, if it matters, how should we be talking about it? Or how should people be talking about it? If you listen to a previous caller, like, well, understand your audience, talk to them. Well, how should we talk about it with that audience? What's most appropriate? What's most helpful? What matters and what to communicate? I got that question too. I think it could start by being rooted in the things that have been reported. And it starts to tell a pretty simple story. And I don't have the therefores all figured out. I have some of them. I'm interested in yours. Linked to the same questions I've asked. We welcome your answer. And by the way, the call-in number is 202-808-9925, 202-808-9925. That we know that they were described as best friends. At least friends by multiple people, best friends by some. We know there are pictures of them partying together. We know there's a quote of Donald Trump saying, I know Jeffrey Epstein, he likes women as much as I do, and some of them on the younger side. We know that there is a ribald birthday card from Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein talking about the secret they share. And isn't it nice to have a secret? We know that there are quotes also now about Jeffrey Epstein about Trump. And in fact, quotes that suggest that Jeffrey Epstein thought that their relationship could be damaging to Trump in the election, and he was 75% there. The dog hadn't yet barked, but he was 75% there. And that Michael Wolff said, let him hang himself. If he denies it, you'll have something to hold over him, and maybe he'll back you up. We know all of that. And we know later that Jeffrey Epstein died, and we know that there are untold people who were involved in that network of relationships, and we don't know who all of them are or what the extent of that conduct was. But those are some of the things that we know. And I think that at least starting with facts is one useful way to talk about it. Let me go to Michael from Gig Harbor. Michael, you're on the air.
Good morning, Jefferson.
Hey.
I just wanted to say that, in the recovery world, there's a saying that says we are as sick as our secrets. And there's no doubt in my mind that Donald is, he's a candidate for a lot of recovery. The thing that kind of bothers me about this is that there's been a lot of he's managed to be able to turn people off onto various subjects rather than focus strictly on getting him out of power and exposing him.
Yep.
So I'm emphasizing this morning the idea that, of course, it's important to open the Epstein files because he's in there and we need to nail the son of a gun.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. And also, thank you for the lesson from recovery. We'll be back.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. So between his tax cuts and crashing the debt ceiling and shifting billions of Treasury dollars into crypto and tariffs and all this other stuff, Trump is threatening to crash our economy. And he doesn't seem to be particularly worried about that. Why would that be? Well, first off, economic disasters are great excuses to cut taxes. Both Reagan and George W. Bush used recessions as their excuse to stimulate the economy by cutting trillions from the taxes of billionaires. Secondly, economic crises increase the tolerance for strongman governments. Hitler rode to power in Europe based on the Great Depression. And third, billionaires make a fortune when there's a market crash because they can buy all the stock that average people are trying to unload from their 401ks to pay the damn rent. There's a whole article about this that lays the whole thing out over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled Crashing the Economy, Trump's Blueprint for Power and Profit. Check it out.
All right, we're back. Going to Keno from Lakeland, Florida. You win the most patient listener award. Go ahead, Keno.
Okay, real quick. I got some information to share, and I want to address what you say. What's next, and what's the strategy for the Democrats?
Yeah.
All right. The information is that we can form a coalition in Congress in the coming year because the rising tide of discontent with Trump is going to bring some Republicans to question their loyalty to Trump. So we need to form a coalition, and restore checks and balances is a tentative name. The painted bridles put a bridle in the mouth of the old horse. You know, people should start carrying around horse bridles as an indication of this coalition to join Democrats and Republicans as a rising tide of discontent with Trump. Now, this morning on C-SPAN, I talked to Congressman Sam Liccardo of California to propose that this coalition put Marjorie Taylor Greene in as Speaker of the House in the coming year. She said she wants to release the Epstein files, and she says that the Republicans are faulty, that they don't have a health care program. So in this coalition to rein in Trump, and I want to make a request of you, Jeff, in this next week and a half you have, if callers could call in with poster messages to the Republicans in Congress to restore checks and balances and rein in Trump, and you keep a list, and then you can publish it when your term is over next week when Tom comes back. Just as a request, people call in. The ingenious ideas that come forth in this program are amazing. And if people could call in messages to the Republicans who are going to start having their consciences bother them and they start having reservations about supporting Trump, what would be a short poster-sized message that in the next No Kings movement that can be presented, but messages to the Republicans? Come on, rein in Trump, restore the checks and balances in this country and Congress. And so if you could keep a list and then publish them, but also people should call in and to Democrat congressmen and Republican congressmen and tell them that we want Marjorie Taylor Greene to go in and replace Mike Johnson. He's been useless. And could you request people to make suggestions for posters about how to address the Republicans to disconnect?
Sure, I can do this, and thank you so much, Keno, for the call, and thanks for your valuable contributions to this community. I do think, and let me talk to the more than handful of Republican listeners to the program and Trump voting listeners and watchers of this program. First of all, you're part of America, and I think that what I fight for is a better America, and what I fight for and what I work for is a better democracy, and that democracy has to be rooted in humility. And I also try to advocate for being strategic, and here's something strategic. I know that so much of the right-wing media engine wants to put its focus on, to use their terms, the left. They want to own the libs, and I know that so much of the focus is what's there, and that's one of Trump's big moves, is to try to put the focus on his political adversary. What I want to say to you is that your impact will be greater on your own party. And in fact, your impact on your own party will be greater than my impact on your party, and more than most of the people who listen to a program like this one. but you can have real impact on your party locally and broadly. When you say, here is what our party should stand for. This is what we think checks and balances, to use Keno's legitimate priority. This is why checks and balances matter. And this is what we think the power of the presidency should be. Those are the limitations we think on the power of the presidency. And if Marjorie Taylor Greene, for instance, is saying release the Epstein files, and that gets Donald Trump to say, she's lost her way, is that because she's really lost her way? Or is it because he's worried about something? And what are your values? What do you stand for? What do you think is important? What do you think your party should stand for? Your answer to that question, if it stands only to destroy your enemy, I don't think that's actually what you think. I can't speak for you, but that's not my best guess. My best guess is you vote the way you vote and advocate what you advocate for because you believe in some things that you think are moral and right. What should that morality dictate? What should you be asking your party to be? What should you be asking your president to be? Hold him to a higher standard. If there were a couple million Republicans that were calling for publicly, and I'd be more comfortable if it was 5 million, but I think 3 million might do, who were saying, please let us be better. Please let us be better with blank. Please let us be better with how this republic should run. Please let us be better with respect to having an imperial presidency. Please let us be better, with, at least as distinctly as with the Epstein stuff, that your 2 million Republicans speaking to the Republican Party will have more impact than 7 million Democrats or independents talking to Republicans. Now, I think that number of Democrats is going up, and I think that number of independents is going up, and I think the number of people who are saying we shall not have kings is going up. There's all kinds of evidence that it's going up. And heck yes, we want to do posters on what to communicate to Republicans. I think that's smart. I like the idea of us communicating not only within our own choir, but going beyond that. Hold yourself to a higher standard. You will have more impact there than you can have anywhere else. And we need bipartisan virtue.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
From David Enrich's book, Dark Towers, Deutsche Bank, Donald Trump, and an Epic Trail of Destruction. This is from Chapter 10. It's titled The Mar-a-Lago Prize. In 1905, a German immigrant living in the Bronx set up a small barber shop on the ground floor of a newly constructed building at 60 Wall Street, in the heart of Manhattan's booming financial district. In an era before skyscrapers, the 25-story L-shaped tower was a landmark, its gargoyle-guarded roof visible from the nearby waterfront. The barbershop thrived, offering shaves and trims to a procession of bankers, stock exchange traders, lawyers, and office workers. The barber's name was Frederick Trump. The same year that he opened the shop, his wife gave birth to a boy named Fred. Many years passed, and the barbershop closed, and the old 60 Wall Street gave way in 1989 to a new 60 Wall Street, a 47-story tower topped with a distinctive pyramid roof. For a time, it was home to J.P. Morgan and Company. Then the bank left, and in 2005, Deutsche Bank started relocating its American staff, displaced ever since 9/11, to its new home at 60 Wall Street. And so Frederick Trump's grandson, born to Fred's wife in 1946, became an occasional visitor to the site of his grandfather's old barber shop. Deutsche's relationship with Donald Trump had only deepened since Mike Offutt left. Justice Justin Kennedy, this is the son of Justice Anthony Kennedy, Justin Kennedy, now a managing director, had become a key point contact for Trump and helped chaperone large real estate deals for him through the bank. Kennedy's role was to find customers to buy portions of loans after Deutsche dispensed the money, a process that allowed Deutsche Bank to make larger loans than it otherwise could have. Kennedy sometimes sat with Trump in his luxury box at the U.S. Open tennis tournament or at Manhattan nightclubs, where Trump would park himself at a table in the corner facing outward, holding court like a mafia don. Now, with Kennedy's encouragement, Deutsche hurried along a Henry Villard-like path. In 2000, the bank had plunked down another $150 million to be used for the renovations of Trump's building at 40 Wall Street. The next year, Deutsche agreed to extend Trump a mortgage worth more than $900 million, at the time the largest ever on a single property, so he could buy the General Motors building on the southeastern corner of New York's Central Park. Trump already owned half of the 50-story building. He wanted the rest. And in 2002, Deutsche agreed to refinance about $70 million that he owed on some of his Atlantic City casinos. Those loans came out of Deutsche's commercial real estate division, which Kennedy was helping to run. Not everyone was enamored with Trump. Seth Waugh, W-A-U-G-H, one of Edson's many Merrill Lynch recruits and the head of Deutsche's American operations, learned around 2001 that the bank was planning to lend Trump about $500 million to use as he wished, basically an unrestricted cash infusion to stabilize the developer's flagging finances. Waugh had previously witnessed up close the carnage that Trump could inflict on imprudent financial institutions. At Merrill, Edison had assigned him the task of mopping up after Trump defaulted on nearly $700 million of bonds that Merrill had helped sell for his Taj Mahal casino in Atlantic City. Waugh was in no hurry to repeat the experience at Deutsche. He voiced strong objections to the proposed new loan to Trump, in which Trump would not have had to put up any hard assets as collateral, and the deal soon died. Yet Deutsche's broader Trump relationship rumbled on. In 2003, another arm of Deutsche, focused on helping companies raise money by selling stocks and bonds to investors, agreed to work with Trump. The point man on this part of the relationship was Richard Byrne, another Merrill veteran who had been involved in the Taj Mahal debacle. Byrne had helped sell the ill-fated Taj bonds to investors. Now Trump hired Byrne's group at Deutsche to issue bonds for his troubled Trump Hotel and Casino resorts. Byrne knew this would be an uphill battle. Not only had Trump defaulted in the past, but he also had recently been taunting investors that he might stop paying back other outstanding bonds. Waugh didn't warn Byrne about the recently rejected $500 million loan, and so Byrne organized a roadshow for Trump to meet with and try to win over big institutional investors. He escorted Trump to meetings all over New York and Boston. At every stop, boardrooms and auditoriums were jammed with traders, fund managers, senior executives, and secretaries curious to see the Donald show, and Trump didn't disappoint. He rocked, he rolled, and he delivered wildly optimistic and inconsistent financial projections. Afterward, Trump called Byrne to ask how much money they'd raised. The answer, alas, was virtually zero. Byrne braced for an explosion as he explained to Trump that Though he'd been treated like a celebrity, nobody trusted him with their money. Trump took the rejection in stride. Let me talk to your salespeople, he requested. Byrne agreed, and Trump came to deliver a pep talk. Fellas, I know this isn't the easiest thing you've all had to sell, he acknowledged, but if you get this done, you'll all be my guests at Mar-a-Lago. Trump was always good at pushing an audience's buttons. A weekend with Trump at Mar-a-Lago, bragging rights that not even money could buy. And this new incentive did the trick. The salesman worked the phones, cast a wider net for more clients, and managed to sell an impressive $485 million of junk bonds, albeit at a high interest rate that reflected investors' fears that Trump might default. The book Dark Towers by David Enrich.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back to the opening question I asked this morning, what is next? I want to go straight to your calls. This is a call-in show as part of what we do. 202-808-9925. Let us go to Chris from Littleton, Colorado, who wins the Most Patient Listener Award. Chris, you are on the air and more.
Yeah, good morning, Jeff. Republicans are attacking Americans with ICE and the military to make people afraid to vote because they know they can't win a fair election. Vote in the midterms. Also, attacking Venezuela for big oil profits would be a huge mistake. Trump wants a war so he can have an excuse to declare martial law and shut down the elections. And a place he can have an oil and drug and pedophile paradise that he and the oligarchs cannot be extradited from. Do not allow a war. Everything else is distraction. If Trump loses the midterms, he is toast. If he has a successful coup, American democracy is toast. Vote in the midterms.
Chris, I can't say it better. It's a great note. In terms of a big what's next, thank you so much for calling in. In terms of big what's next, excuse me, we are out from an election that will significantly define the success of American democracy and the success of Trump's presidency. This will be the focus of every Republican in office, every Republican donor, every Republican legislator, every Republican member of Congress, everybody in the Trump administration, Trump himself. I say everybody in the Trump administration, maybe there's like one person who will be focused a little bit less on it, but in the main, that's what their focus will be on. And yes, they'll be doing that, not only the messages that they communicate, the moves they make to deliver message, but also what they can do to suppress votes or manipulate votes. I had our Trump supporter friend, one of our Trump supporter friends, call yesterday and said, we're going to have democracy, we'll stop elections. I need to say something about the risk of overstatement. The threat to democracy isn't that black and white images from the 1930s with red armbands will march down the streets and shut down polling places. It wouldn't look like that. It wouldn't be that. That's not the deal. Okay? Those are the images in our head because we watch movies and TV for the last 50 years, but that is not the image that would happen. We have to put a more accurate image in our head. Something a little closer is Hungary. Something is a little closer is Viktor Orban. Something a little closer is where the courts just aren't as independent, where elections sort of happen, but they're not as independent, where they're a little more rigged, where the media still exists, but it's just not as independent. It doesn't hold power to account, where favor trading and corruption just continues to increase. We talk about democracy being attacked. It is, I don't want to say it's nuanced. It is pretty palpable. It is pretty obvious, but it's not obvious like the 1930s. It's obvious like now, like what actually happened. And it's obvious by the manipulation that will happen on social media that is happening. Be aware of what's happening now. We talked about the threat to democracy. There's a risk of overstatement, but more importantly, I think, more aptly, more accurately, is there's a risk that we will misinterpret, or that people who are not as worried about democracy overall will misinterpret it as overstatement because they'll have the wrong image in their heads. I like what you said. It might mean things like, in fact, are you okay? It might mean things like, we have one of our dear friends coughing a bunch. I want to make sure we didn't need to call somebody. It might mean that we need to be, it does mean that we need to be working on some of those democracy fundamentals and make sure that people actually understand what it's going to look like. Let's go back to your calls. William from Kirkwood, you are on the air. Another crack at it.
Hey, my apologies earlier. My call dropped somehow. So anyway, at the top of the show, you talked about whether or not the Epstein stuff matters.
Yeah.
I do believe it does matter, even if it's just for the morally, ethically correct thing for us to try to do, which would be to pursue charges of somehow against Trump, but at least on a more conclusive note, put it out there that people can see the kind of person he is. Unfortunately, the MAGA right will not believe it, but that's something that we still have to do. I think typically Democrats try to take the high road, and it blows back in our face sometimes.
Yeah. No. So, and I think as we think about how to talk about it, and we're talking to Republican friends and allies, if you want to ask if it matters, ask them. Ask them. And if they say it doesn't, ask, did you think it mattered 2 years ago? And if they say, yes, it did, what changed? And if the only thing that changed is, well, now Trump is president and he doesn't want it to come out because there's so many things that continue to implicate and use his name, then what does that say? And what does it say about their movement? What does it say about that president? What does that say about that person? That ultimately, what does their identity stand for? If we attack one another's identity, they'll resist to defend that identity. If we try to manifest, try to bring out the best in one another, including the best in the people that we disagree with on many or at least some things politically, that has a better chance of actually connecting relationship, but also being persuasive. And if we're going to, and therefore I think that's one of the ways to talk about it, that they think it matters. Why does it matter? Well, because for years they said it was the most important thing. For years, right. It's all that we could hear about. It's like, oh, it's the most important thing.
And I think it's humorous almost that Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, once the Epstein files released in full, and I wonder what would happen in regard to her vis-a-vis the Republican Party. And if I could I bring up just a bit of humor?
I got like maybe 10 seconds where I got to get another call.
Okay, if someone was going to listen and try to figure out who listens to Channel 127, they'd think we're a bunch of fat people, horribly unhealthy, owe a lot of money to the IRS. And that's what the advertisers all sound like. So I know that's not who we are, but anyway, have a great show.
Well, call CB Distillery. It'll make you feel better. What, is that what you meant? I don't know. So I want to say that it's that for years they just said it was the whole deal. It was everything that mattered. I want to say something about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I served with a guy who reminded me a little bit of Marjorie Taylor Greene. He was one of the most right-wing members of the Oregon legislature. We sat next to each other on a committee. We sort of became friends. And he ended up getting criticized as being crazy by his own party. And the reason was, on occasion, he would vote against their biggest donors. Like a transportation package would come up, and he would say, wait a minute, we're not for spending a whole bunch of government money on stuff. And he would be against that transportation package. Or there would be something about open government that would share information. maybe even impact how elections are paid for. And he'd be like, well, yeah, I'm not for corruption. I'm for anti-corruption. And he was kind of an unassuming guy, and he got a little bit low-key teased. And I think the reasons he got teased had more to do that he was a person of principle. The person they ended up sending to Congress was Cliff Bentz, who was urbane in deportment, and finding his principle was harder. This guy was a person of principle. There are going to be people of principle, and I admire being people of principle. They can be people of principle that are different than my principles. If the principle is trying to destroy all humanity and democracy, I don't like that principle. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, when Donald Trump is criticizing her, it's probably not because of what she's doing wrong or immorally or counter to principles. Probably not.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Yeah, we'll have more ads coming up after this. And they're going to be great. You're going to love them. And we are back. Let's go to Sandy from, is it Nelma, Wisconsin?
Yes.
Go ahead. I appreciated your candor. Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, it is. It's a great little town of nobody.
Well, you're not nobody.
Well, thank you. I have a comment on the Epstein file, as in what Jesus says about the truth shall set you free.
Yeah.
I believe we need to hear it.
Well, I appreciate
that. And
that.
then I have a question about this. Were all the files up there, or did Trump take some of them home with him
I don't
to
know.
Mar-a-Lago?
It's a great question.
That's what it's about. Yeah.
I mean, I will say this. When there is a band of secrecy that has been working on keeping things secret for years and years and years, when you get a whole bunch of files, the odds that they're every single thing about the secret seem pretty low, right? Like there's undoubtedly, like I think there's probably interesting stuff and important stuff for people to know. Is it the whole story? I sort of doubt it, but it might lead to things that could lead to more of the whole story. My wife's great desire is just for us to know what's going on. Right? She thinks, in fact, one of the cool things about being alive is learning what's going on. She is really interested when a pope is sworn in. She's really interested when there's a big event happening down the road, because she thinks part of the joy of living is getting to learn and understand and experience. One of the reasons she likes NASA, one of the reasons she likes science, is because maybe one of the highest purposes of living is so that we can learn more. And I don't think we'll learn everything, but we'd learn more.
I have one more question for you, please.
Okay.
Okay, if when he takes us to war, can we get him out of office even though we're in a war?
Officially, yes, but if there are risks. I don't overstate those risks, but is there time? I mean, you'll hear people say, "Oh, there's timing of martial law around elections." My grave concerns are just as grave, but more pedestrian. Because if I were trying to strategize the erosion of democracy, I would not throw the frog into a fire. I would throw him into a slowly growing hotter and hotter vat of boiling water. And I believe the greatest threats to democracy are the things that are more subtle, that are more manipulative, and not as easy to make a short-term movie about, and that is what makes them dangerous. And that's one of the reasons why I'm glad we have a little more than a few minutes together each day, so that we can dig into some of that hard part. But Sandy, I'm going to go to the next caller.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Phil from Costa Mesa, you win the Most Patient Listener Award. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you, Jefferson?
I'm good.
Everything we need to know, believe it or not, I don't know if it's going to surprise you, is in a movie during Christmas called The Christmas Carol.
All right.
Ebenezer Scrooge. It's the whole story of mom and pop going corporate.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Corporations are just operating the way they operate. We're kind of going along with the flow because there's more money.
Yeah.
But it changes the character of the person. And then it's Dickens telling us the machines aren't a good idea for mankind.
Yeah.
So the bottom line, Jefferson, everyone should watch that movie, and you can talk about that. That'll give you a great way to talk about the problem. But the big problem is we're working for the corporations, using their products and so on. So we need to get mom and pop back on the street.
Change starts with you. You can be calling your Democratic or Republican representatives to let them know what you think by calling 202-224-3121. It's the Capitol switchboard. It'll get you right through to them. Did you know that the ancient Roman Republic, which for 480 years was actually a democratic republic before Julius Caesar kind of ended the democracy phase and replaced it with the autocracy phase, that they were brought down by a very small group of very rich people. The richest man in ancient Rome was Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the richest guy, the billionaire of Rome. And he frankly hated the Roman free bread for all welfare system. It was being paid for with his tax dollars, after all. So him and Pompey the Great and a few other rich guys got together, and they basically crashed Rome. They turned it into an oligarchy and then into a tyranny. And the parallels to what Trump is doing right now are absolutely shocking. There's an article about it over at HartmannReport.com titled "American Caesar: Trump's Path to Power Mirrors Rome's Darkest Days." Check it out.
A little bit extra. And I do want to say thank you to everybody who supports this program, who makes a donation to their non-commercial stations, who supports Free Speech TV, who supports the advertisers on the commercial stations, who in fact goes into the store when those exist and say thank you for advertising with Progressive Radio, and thank you for supporting the Thom Hartmann Show, who calls them up, who sends in a little note. It actually really does matter. I ran a little radio station, and we would go, and I would go to the places that advertised, and I would buy stuff, and they noticed, and I would say, this is why I'm buying it. I wouldn't say I ran the station, but I would go in and I'd buy stuff, and I would do my Christmas shopping at the advertisers. And they had the support. We didn't exactly have advertisers, non-commercial station, but we had sponsors, we had supporters, and they were commercial businesses, and I would patronize them, but I would patronize them vocally. When you do that, I promise, it really does matter, because words passes along. And said, oh yeah, I heard about this, and what everybody wants is some loyal customers. And it goes back to our last caller in the break, who said, you know what? If you watch the Christmas Carol, a lot of this is, are we going to support the mom and pop shops? We had calls yesterday talking about how, yeah, we should be boycotting some stuff, focusing our Black Friday money on pro-democracy, pro-social, pro-human, pro-equality businesses that actually hold truly American values. We should be putting our money there. We should be shopping locally. You can vote with your dollars, and the people who transact with dollars listen to that a lot, including when you are vocal about it. Now let's be vocal with your calls. Lila from Madison, Wisconsin, you're on the air.
She's covering up. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Put them on the air. We can all talk together.
Okay.
No, I don't mean that, Lila. What do you called in? What do you want to talk about?
Oh, I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
And, how her time is limited.
Yeah.
So
you think when you say her time is limited, you mean her time is limited that she's going to be in prison because she's going to be let out, or that she is going to suffer some horrible fate?
I'm just wondering if in 3 years she's taken out as this regime ends, just like Harvey Epstein did, with easy access to this minimum security prison. She could be gone, and it could be due to quote-unquote natural causes. And then there's no evidence left about who she's covering up for.
And there are some. So if we want to be speculators and alligators, and by alligator people, those who allege, isn't that what an alligator is? Those who allege things. You just want to allege things and allegate things. Then one could speculate that when organized crime take somebody out.
Yeah.
They take somebody out because dead people tell no tales, but they also take somebody out because it sends signals to other people that they shouldn't. And if you're wondering why Ghislaine Maxwell has been a little bit cooperative with the Trump administration, and one is speculating and allegating, then, I know it's alleging, I understand the English language roughly speaking, that the meeting with senior Justice Department officials and Ghislaine Maxwell in her place of current residence, it probably has some impact on her conduct. But Lila, I appreciate your call very much. I want to go to Robin, who from Kingston, Washington, is a friend of the show. Go ahead, Robin.
Morning, Jeff. Thank you. It's a good 2 weeks we got in front of us here. I want to respond to what you, I think, opened basically the show.
Please.
This morning's episode, which is what matters ahead.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And in my opinion, what matters ahead, number one, by far, is to, one way or another, get more citizens caring about and becoming more involved in their own self-governances at whatever level. To me, anything about Trump to me doesn't really matter, anything about it, because actually a decade ago I listened to David K. Johnson, and wrote the book, It's Worse Than You Think, and I listened to Michael Cohen, who told us who Trump is, and I didn't need any more convincing. So a lot of this is distractionary stuff. I will say to you, Jeff, that one of the first callers kind of slipped in a little punk to you where he got you to talk about no, protestings are not needed, and he slipped in voting is not needed. And if you review the tape, you'll probably hear a very clever way that they do that. Anyways.
No, and I think I made the case for. I hope I made the case for protesting and voting. But go ahead.
No, you have. My point is how clever their punkiness is.
Yeah.
Okay, when 40% of our eligible voters only care to get engaged in self-governance, then we sort of deserve what we get for a poor self-governance. And my position has always been, in opposition to a lot of people on the show, is that we do not need one MAGA or right-wing vote. We just need center-left people to show up. And my position is protests actually don't really matter, that pretests matter, and pretest means getting involved earlier. And next week, our next call is my magical election bus, and I think you'll enjoy that. So thank you for being here, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks, Robin.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And my only quick response is I agree with the things, but I also don't think it's either or.
Our book in today's Thom Hartmann Book Club is by Harvey J. Kaye, Professor Harvey Kaye. Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again. This is from the introduction. On December 1st, 1862, in the midst of the Civil War, just weeks before he was to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his annual message to Congress. Lincoln firmly believed that the United States had an historic responsibility to demonstrate to the world that people can govern themselves, make equal rights not just a self-evident truth, but a manifest one, and create a political and economic order in which working people, both white and black, are not compelled to bow to anyone, neither aristocrats nor capitalists. Empowered by tens of thousands of black slaves who were already liberating themselves from bondage by escaping to the Union lines, and increasingly confident that the majority of his fellow Americans would recognize the truth of what he was saying, Lincoln closed his address by calling on them to see that the time had come to remember who they were and what they demanded, or what that demanded. He told them that to save the nation and all that it represented, they must live up to the nation's declared revolutionary purpose and promise, and act to radically enhance American freedom by bringing an end to slavery. This is a quote from Lincoln's address. Fellow citizens, we cannot escape history. The fiery trial through which we pass will light us down
in honor or dishonor to the latest generation. We say we are for the Union. The world will not forget that we say this. We know how to save the Union. The world knows we do know how to save it. We, even we here, hold the power and bear the responsibility. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. We too, end of quote from Lincoln, back to Harvey. We too cannot escape history. Our own struggle to save the nation and the promise it proclaims has begun. Finally, after more than 40 years of fear-driven class war and culture war campaigns against the democratic achievements of generations, the hard-won rights of workers, women and people of color, and the very memory of how they were secured, and now both in the wake of the election debacle of 2016, which gave the presidency to the corrupt, mendacious, racist, sexist, and treacherous demagogue Donald Trump, and continued control of Congress to the formerly conservative but increasingly reactionary Republican Party, and in the face of intensified class and culture war campaigns, we the people have come not only to recognize that American democratic life is in jeopardy, but also to mobilize in hopes of saving it. Millions of us have rallied to the resistance and expressed our democratic fears and desires in action. In the historic Women's March and March for Our Lives of young people, the protests, demonstrations, and legal actions to defend the lives and rights of immigrants and refugees, the Me Too movement to combat sexual assault and harassment, the massive teacher strikes for higher pay and better funding of public schools in states red and blue, and the enthusiastic canvassing and campaigning for a blue wave to win back Congress in the 2018 midterm elections. But resistance is not enough. The time has come for us to remember who we are and what that demands. The time has come for us to embrace our radical history, the history of how a generation of Americans, high and low, and in all their diversity, not only turned their colonial rebellion into a war for independence, but also imbued American life, whether they all intended it or not, with radical imperative and impulse by declaring a revolutionary promise of freedom, equality, and democracy for all. The history of how generations of radicals and reformers served as the prophetic memory of that promise, and how generations of ordinary men and women, native-born and immigrant, struggled to make real the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and to expand not only the we in We the People, but also the powers of the people. And most especially in view of the crises we ourselves face, the history of how our greatest generations confronted and prevailed over the forces that threatened to destroy the nation and bury its revolutionary promise in the 1770s, 1860s, and 1930s and 1940s, not to mention the 1960s, by acting to make the United States, both inspired by Washington, Lincoln, and FDR, and pushing them to go farther than they might otherwise have gone, radically freer, more equal, and more democratic than ever before. The time has come to take hold of that history and make America radical again. I've titled this collection of my speeches and essays, Take Hold of Our History, Make America Radical Again, for reasons that will become obvious, and yet I cannot help but confess that if I had had to title it otherwise, I would have been sorely tempted to use, with full attribution, the title Max Lerner gave to his 1938 work, It Is Later Than You Think, The Need for a Militant Democracy. While it may not seem so, the crisis we face is no less demanding of action, urgent action, than that which confronted his generation. The book Take Hold of Our History by Harvey J. Kaye. Share the Thom Hartmann program with your friends. Our podcast, The Hartmann Report, is absolutely free and available wherever fine podcasts are available. And the entire 3-hour podcast is available over at thomhartmann.com.
We are back. We're going to go to your calls. We're going to go to Becky. Is it Nagani
It is Nagani.
Oh, good. I like it.
You did a great job. So many people mispronounced it.
Well,
Mateo got it right, too.
so what's up, Becky?
Well, I just wanted to, for one thing, I want to be thankful today. I know it's not Thursday, but I'm thankful for your callers, for one thing.
Me too.
I go to the protests in Marquette, which is, 15 minutes away from Nagani. Every Saturday, they gather in front of the post office. We have our signs, and the support that we get from people driving by, walking by, is just incredible. I mean, people are getting it. I really think we're making a difference. When you look at the elections on Tuesday, I mean, this is going on all over the country, and I'm thankful for the people I've met there. They're just so wonderful, and everyone that goes by and gives us the thumbs up or the peace sign or tooting the horns or, the hearts that they're sending us, it's really been awesome, and I look forward to going every week.
That's awesome.
And if you can't go for whatever reason, maybe you can drive by and give us a toot.
The toots matter. Sean's laughing. She thinks he's thinking something else. She couldn't hold herself.
Not from that end.
So no, like honking the horn, toots. I'm writing that down. Toots matter. I'll respond to my wife when the topic comes up. I learned it on the air. I learned it on the Thom Hartmann show.
Yep, I could make a sign that says "Toots matter."
That's a great sign. You got to make that sign. Of course, that's a sign. That'll get so many toots. It will get more. That sign will get more toots than many other signs because people will enjoy it.
I'm on it. I just went and bought some cardboard for some new ones.
Fantastic. No, it matters for you. I've held a sign before, and it matters. In fact, there was have I mentioned this before? There was this MTV made a 1-hour movie. I think they wanted to be a feature, but it ended up just being an hour. And it followed two candidates for Congress, I think. One was definitely for Congress. I can't remember if the other was for Congress also, one Democrat, one Republican. And the Democrat they were following, a guy named John Cranley, was a law school classmate of mine, ended up being mayor of Cincinnati. He didn't win that congressional race, but I lived in his house. I helped him out, and I lived in his house during that campaign, lived with his folks. And along with another law school classmate of mine who ended up becoming a very successful professional poker player, for what it's worth. He was an MIT guy, brilliant guy. And in that 1-hour documentary, whatever you call it when it's a 1-hour movie sort of thing, I was my glimpse of the camera, or the camera's glimpse of me, was me jumping around with a sign. I don't remember if it was raining or not, but like jumping around like a banshee. And what I was doing was I was playing for the toots. That's what I was doing. I was trying to get everybody to honk their horn. I was playing for the toots. And it mattered to me, right? When somebody would, I'd be like, okay, I'll keep going for a little longer, right? And right? I think it matters. And I want to say something else. And by the way, when they do that, that shows that you're mattering to them, because they feel like they're not alone. And they feel like, oh, maybe then they're a little more likely to say something to somebody else. They're a little more likely in the grocery store just to wrap up their thing by just saying, vote Democrat. Right, which is an easy way to wrap up when you're at the grocery store, you finish something out, and you can also just do, hey, love thy neighbor, right? A little more likely to activate more and more people. Each of these can spread ripples of hope, and they do matter. And let me say one other thing about it. In this era of social media, I think that stuff matters more, not less. Let me be clear. I think social media wields more and more power, being strategic there, and some of the strategy I think has to be developing new networks and new media outlets to compete with what is owned by the people who want to subjugate and oppress. But I also think that means that people in the age of AI are wanting humanity and reality, and that is where I do believe that's getting more and more important. So what you're doing, I think, is more and more important. That's what I have to say, Becky.
I agree. Someone thanks me every time I go.
Yeah.
When I'm going back to my car, people stop. They thank me for what I'm doing, and all of us. It's awesome.
All of Nagani thanks you.
Shouting out to Dave from Hoffman Estates. I heard you shout out to me last time I called in, and Denise from Calumet. I love to hear from her too. She's another Youper. So.
Okay, I got it. What's a Youper?
From the UP of Michigan.
Oh, there you go. So this is why I learn things.
Yeah, YOOPER.
Y-O-O-P-E-R. All right, the Yoopers, thank you. Let's go to Al from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Not a Yooper, but also in it for the toots. Go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I'm laughing about the whole situation. Do I think it's important? I do, but I don't think people are going to get, no matter what side you fall on, politically or religiously, you're not going to get what you think you're going to get if they release this, whatever it is, file or list.
Sure.
Because this is the way this works. And I love that it works this way. If the names on that list happen to be Rush Limbaugh, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, Sean Hannity, this radio station and CNBC are going to be running around going, I knew it. I knew they were on it. And Fox and everyone else is going to go, I want to see the proof. Now, conversely, if those names are Bill and Hillary Clinton, Robert De Niro, Rachel Maddow, your station and MSNBC are going to be going, they're doing that's bullshit. I want to see the proof. And you know what? Fox and Newsmax are going to go, I knew they were involved. I knew they. Meanwhile, none of us are involved.
Careful with the cursing. We've got commercial stations that can't do that.
It's crap. It's crap what I'm saying. We're down here on the ground, little people fighting over this like we have a dog in this fight, and it's so much worse and evil than any of us know. And our voices, it matters if we stay together, but guess what? Liberals want conservatives to die and fade away, and everyone's right. My side's right. My guy's fighting for me. Your guy would step over you on a sidewalk like my guy would if we were laying there asking for help.
Yeah. So I'm going
we all get together as a people. We're done.
I'm going to agree, but I'm also going to disagree that that at least speaking for myself, and I think speaking for a lot of people here, that my first love, my first loyalty is to humanity. And because my loyalty is to humanity, I think that humanity has to figure out how to work together. And so my loyalty comes to democracy. And that democracy is not limited to the percentage of people who agrees with me on everything. My assumption is that the number of people who agrees with me on everything is one, and that person is wearing my pants. And not because he's out there, somebody's out there stole my pants, it's because it's me. And so while I agree that we are biased by our priors and cognitive dissonance runs rampant, and we are more likely to confirm our biases as humans, vastly more likely to take on information that confirms our biases than that undermines our biases. And I also think that's why long-form conversation matters. I also think that's why even smart persuasion matters, so we can think about what might land, what might cross over, I even think that's why identifying cross-cutting priorities matters. It's even why I prioritize democracy as a principle, because I believe that matters to more than 50% plus one of the American people. I sadly don't think it applies and is resonant to 99% of the people. But I do think that there's a supermajority of people in this country who can and will and should and might support the idea that we should decide things together. I think there are some cross-cutting priorities, and that even just as a matter of political philosophy are the equivalent of not just stepping over our political adversary on the street. I don't think we should build a movement that does that, but that's just my take, Al. Last word for you.
I try to be optimistic, and believe me, in my everyday life, smiling, laughing, joking.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get down the rabbit hole so deep that you realize it's almost a futile effort, because that 0.5% is controlling the narrative that truly controls the narrative. And it ain't Donnie Trump, and it ain't Joey Biden, it's much bigger than that.
Yep.
And we're all being played. We're just little cogs in the wheel, and we're just so used to running around pointing at each other that we can't get off our own little things to look at each other and go, we're on the outside. Ned Beatty said it. There are no Sunnis and Shiites. There are no Republicans and Democrats. There's haves and have-nots. Yep. You might as well be on the side to get you well paid.
Yep.
So that's what I.
Oh, sorry about that. I appreciate that, Al. Switch over to the next caller, but do appreciate and hear your point. Dave from Clearwater, you're on the air.
I am.
Yep.
I was having a good time today. I thought of something to replace that bobblehead somebody wanted to do.
Okay.
early on the program.
Yep.
I'll talk about that in a minute, but I'd really like for you to look in your phone directory and give us the Capitol's switchboard number, because
Yeah, I can do that. I can do that real quick. We've got it right here. It's 202-225-3121. I'll say it again. Capital Switchboard, Congressional Switchboard, 202-225-3121 or 202-224-3121. So it's either 225 or 224. Both work. 202-225-3121 or 202-224-3121. And the White House comment line is 202-456-1111. David?
Hey, I appreciate that. I'm sure somebody will write it down other than me. I wrote it down a couple of times.
Yeah.
On the bobblehead.
Yep.
Down here, and I'm in Clearwater, Florida, so down here in the South, we have a sort of different way of doing this.
5 seconds.
If you could get yourself a creosoted toast and a 55-gallon.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
The bobblehead needed to be quick. We're running out of time, but David, thank you so much for your call. It is Free Speech TV, and let us go to Mike from Madison, Wisconsin.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah.
I'm just calling to say that why is it important to release the Epstein files is important.
Yep.
Under the Bank Secrecy Act, banks are required to file suspicious activity within 60 days to government. Epstein was worth $600 million at the time of his death. 20 years, J.P. Morgan turned a blind eye. Epstein opened up over 134 accounts and transferred over $1 billion there. Laundered money. J.P. Morgan, Deutsche Bank, Bank of America, and Bank of New York Mellon were all found guilty by the United States government for suspicious activity and money laundering. They all paid fines. This is why this 20-year sex trafficking ring is important. Thousands of victims. It is important to release all information to the American public because we may have a guilty president and politicians who are currently serving who are setting our current national policies. We have corruption, setting more corruption. That's why it's important to release the Epstein files. In 2019, Epstein died suspiciously or suicidally. Nobody knows. And J.P. Morgan transferred over 4,700 transactions. Just think of that, totaling over $1 billion. This is why Americans don't trust government. This is why Americans don't trust politicians. This is why Americans today feel the system is rigged. That's why this all needs to be brought to Americans' interest so they can see the Epstein files. That's why it's important. It's all greed, corruption, and corruption. Thanks for taking my call.
Mike, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. I want to go straight to Brian from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Brian.
Hey. From how you started the show, I think honor is what's missing in our society. And how, Eastern societies, Japan, for instance, it's everything. If you have no personal honor, you're nothing. Here in the States, it's all about how much money you have, celebrity culture, are you famous? And I don't know. I think we're getting the government we deserve because so many people don't want to think too hard about what's going on in our country. So many people don't want to be bothered with paying attention to politics.
Yeah.
And they want to be lied to.
Yeah.
They want to be lied to like a child. Oh, everything's going to be fine. Everything will be okay. We'll take care of it later. So what do we end up with? One of the biggest liars in the world in the White House. And it speaks volumes about us. And I think, I grew up in Chicagoland. So I've seen dozens of politicians, lawyers, cops, judges go to prison for criminal behavior over the course of my adult life.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were Democrats.
Sure.
We got Bob Menendez, U.S. senator sitting in prison right now because he was a dishonorable, lying Democrat. Bill Clinton, another unhonorable, lying Democrat. And we don't open up and be honest with ourselves about the type of people that want to jump in front of the parade and lead our country. You know, we just let them, and then we all talk to each other about the person that's decided they want to lead us. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I wanted to respond to the first thing. We're running out of time. The honor point, essentially, I've talked to one of my best friends about that very thing, about how do we reestablish honor in America as a value.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Human beings have a couple of unique characteristics. The first is that we can be very tender and loving and concerned and caring toward people we perceive as being our group, us. We can also be extraordinarily violent against people that we consider to be them, if we think of them or this other as a threat. Probably the classic example of this is Adolf Hitler convincing Germans that, Jews were a threat to them and good Germans going along with the Holocaust. Well, this othering is built into our DNA. This is, ancient stuff. And the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, when he started, picking up the white racist vote after Democrats laid it down in the 60s, the Republicans have been using this to try to other minorities in America as a political strategy. And this is really deadly stuff. There's a whole op-ed about it over at HartmannReport.com. Is othering human nature's deadliest instinct? Check it out.
I want to take that up as a subject for future show. What would it take to reestablish honor as a core American value? I think that is a cross-cutting question. Over the last 50 years, I would say, you can pick your own timeline, it has felt to me that honor has seemed like it's for suckers. That really just what matters is if you do blank, blank, blank and get ahead. And that is the lesson of Donald Trump. That is his story. His story, and I think Republicans know that's what his story is. That where is his honor? But I don't mean to distract us by focusing on that. I think he is an outgrowth of what's happening in the country. That it's that if you're famous, if you're rich, if you get what you want, that's all that matters. And that can't be all that matters. We have to reestablish some sense of shared morality in the country. And to be clear, I'm not the standard bearer of that. I'm not the person everybody should do what they say, do as I do. I'm a little embarrassed to even bring it up. I don't have a foundation of stone upon which to stand to say everybody act like me and be good and perfect, because I'm not even effing close. But I do think as an observer of the country, I think the country works better if it has shared values. Some shared commitment to what we all believe is good and what is not. And some shared, of course, commitment to some shared facts as well. I think one of those shared values ought to be what we've called honor, which I think, even in the future, I want to define it. It's worth defining. I think it has gone down, but when somebody sacrifices themselves, when somebody takes an irrational act, when I say you're the coalition of benevolently irrational, what value are we tying into? What is sacrifice? Why does sacrifice ever make sense? Well, sacrifice makes sense as a manifestation of some underlying value, and one of those is, there's my honor standing on it. Just this idea that something matters, something radiates out from what I do beyond just what I get from it. And that's a conversation that's worth having. And I'd say to the more than a handful of people we've got that didn't vote for Joe Biden who listen to this program, that is a conversation about which we have a shared stake, a shared set of values in this country. That is not merely, it has political implications for sure, but is not merely, or it's certainly in common parlance, a political conversation. That is something that we have to, there's some things we have to reestablish. This can't just be a food fight. There's some things we have to reconnect with to one another. What is worth talking about with our families at Thanksgiving? How do we reestablish a set of shared values? I think that's an interesting conversation. What do we have in common? What should we have in common? I think that's an interesting conversation. What should we stand for together? I think that's an interesting conversation and an important one. And one that our current political party structure does not, I believe it's begging for it, but only obliquely, only from the side, only accidentally, only in opposition. Because mostly what it wants is a food fight. And I think two things, and part of the challenge is, and I think two things very deeply. And part of the challenge is those two things conflict a little bit. One of those things, I believe very deeply, is that this anti-small d democratic movement has to lose. It has to lose. We have to build a pro-democracy coalition that is big enough that the coalition of corruption and self-dealing is not in power. That the coalition of wielding power over the many for the benefit of the few, that can't win. That the myopia of the short term and not honoring nature and more, that team can't win. They have to lose. I believe that. They're wrong. They got to lose. Another thing I believe very strongly is we have to figure out how to live together. Is it can't just be a political war. That our families, our coworkers, our neighbors, people who vote differently than we do, we've got to find some shared love, some shared commitment to something. Because I just don't think a house split upon itself, separate on itself, can stand. In some way, we've got to figure that out. And I think both things. And the challenge is, if the only thing I thought be easier, if the only thing I thought was, yay friends, boo enemies, yay us, boo them, we're right, they're wrong, we live, they should be harmed, because it'd be easier. But it's not what I think. And I think it's true probably for a bunch of all of us. And so I think we've got to figure out how to, luckily, they say that one sign of brilliance is being able to keep two conflicting ideas in your mind at the same time and still function. These aren't fully conflicting ideas. They're rooted, I think, out of the same value system. But we've got to do both. We've got to do both. And I'm going to probably talk more about that this week. We've got to do both. And I think as part of that, what are some of those shared values? I'm glad the caller talked about honor, because I think that's one of them. We'll be back after this. This is Tom's show. This is your show. I'm Jeff.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.
We say fight back!
Our book in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is The Cabinet, George Washington and the Creation of an American Institution by Leslie M. Chervinsky. This is from the introduction. At 11:30 in the morning on August 22nd, 1789, a large cream-colored coach pulled up to the front door of Federal Hall, 26 Wall Street in New York City. 6 matching, perfectly groomed horses pulled the elegant carriage with sparkling gold trim. The coachman, outfitted in crisp white and red trimmed livery, jumped down from the back of the carriage and opened the door. An elegantly dressed man with powdered hair stepped down with a portfolio of papers under his arm. He towered over his companion, Henry Knox, the acting Secretary of War, and his slaves attending to the horses. His ornate coach and his imposing presence drew curious stares from strangers passing by on the street. He walked up to the front door of Federal Hall and was immediately announced. George Washington, the first president of the United States, had arrived for his first visit to the United States Senate. This was no ordinary meeting. 2 years earlier, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia had agreed that the Senate would advise and consent on treaties and other questions of foreign policy. But in practice, how the president and the Senate would interact remained for the first office holders to work out. Washington's relationship with the Senate was just one of countless governing details that he had to establish as the first president. Establishing precedent for every presidential action consumed his thoughts in the first few years of his administration. Not only would the American public and international audience judge his every action, but his successors would be guided by his choices. The stakes could not have been higher. The future of the Republic rested on Washington making the right decisions. He approached every new situation with caution and took action only after consulting with his advisors. His first visit to the Senate was no different. The tense relationship between Native American nations and the United States posed an immediate challenge after Washington's inauguration on April 30th, 1789. Most Native American nations had sided with the British during the Revolutionary War, recognizing the threat that American settlers posed to native lands. On November 15th, 1789, representatives from the national government, North and South Carolina, the Creeks, and the Cherokees planned to meet to discuss the controversial treaties signed between 1783 and 1789 and to negotiate a new treaty. Washington had to select the representatives to send on behalf of the federal government, another important first for the new president. At his August 22nd meeting, Washington planned to seek advice about what instructions he should give to the commissioners. Because he considered Native American relations to fall under the heading of foreign policy, he followed the constitutional guidelines calling for him with the Senate. On May 25th, 1789, less than a month after his inauguration, Washington sent to the Senate all of the United States' previous treaties with Indian nations, along with a number of supporting documents. After a brief discussion, the Senate postponed its consideration of these papers. At the beginning of August, the Senate created a committee to meet with Washington. That committee planned the minute details of the upcoming meeting, down to where Washington would sit and how he would enter the chamber. On August 20 and 21, Washington nominated commissioners to negotiate with the Southern Indians. On August 21st, he sent an official note to the Senate announcing his visit the next day to discuss the terms of the proposed treaty. When Washington and Knox arrived at Federal Hall at 11:30 a.m., the doorkeeper announced their arrival. Washington sat at the front of the chamber and Knox took the chair to the right. Washington handed his remarks to Knox, who in turn handed them to Vice President John Adams. Adams read the statement, but as Senator William McClay from Pennsylvania recalled, the senator, quote, could not master one sentence of it, end quote. Adams was not known for his public speaking skills, but the senator's struggles weren't entirely his fault. The Senate gathered for their work in the large chamber that occupied the first floor of Federal Hall. Because of the August heat in New York City, the doorkeeper had opened the windows in search of a cooling breeze. But along with fresh air, noisy Wall Street's pedestrians, carriages, peddlers, and horses flowed into the Senate chamber. The clamor overpowered Adams' voice, so few senators could make out the words that Washington had so carefully crafted. After a few complaints, Adams repeated the speech from the beginning. Washington's remarks offered a brief synopsis of the current diplomatic state between the United States and the Southern Indians and posed 7 questions for the Senate to answer with an aye or a no. Adams finished his recitation and sat. The seconds ticked by as the senators remained in awkward silence. A few shuffled papers or cleared their throats. McClay speculated in his diary that his colleagues were so intimidated by Washington's presence in the Senate chamber that they cowered in shameful silence. Eager to show that they could be active participants in the creation of foreign policy, McClay stood up and suggested referring the Washington 7 questions to committee for discussion in detail. Washington then lost his temper, stood out at, "This defeats every purpose of my coming here." The senators fell into a stunned hush before Washington acquiesced to McClay's suggestion and offered to return to the Senate a few days later. Although he did not return to the following Monday, his first visit to the Senate was an inauspicious the executive legislative relationship. The book is The Cabinet by Leslie M. Chervinsky.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And we're back. We'll be back with your calls in a moment. I've been bit by bit sharing some of the thoughts I've been working on for more than the past several months, but that I shared a bunch of them at a speech I gave recently. I did talk about democracy, maybe not a big surprise. And it says here that if we're going to run for America, let's run for democracy. Joe Biden ran using the word democracy, but we have less made the case for democracy. We assume agreement, even though agreement has wavered. So when I say we got to run on democracy, we have to run for democracy, make the case and make it work. According to Pew, in 12 wealthy nations, including the United States, a meeting of 64% of adults say they are dissatisfied with the way their democracy is working, while a meeting of 35% are satisfied. That's almost 2/3 to 1/3 to the bad. And of course, the enemies of democracy, when they get into power, benefit to some degree by making it work worse, or work worsely, because it continues to erode that trust. And if democracy loses public support, the strong man has greater appeal and less resistance. So over these days, when I'm honored to be with you, that's one of the things we're going to talk about. I want to jump to your calls, including Pat, also from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Go ahead, Pat.
Hi, Jeff. Good to talk to you again. I'm shocked that your show takes my calls. I even talked to Tom recently. Of course, we did not. We absolutely do not. As a moderate, he a progressive, he and I do not see it eye to eye at all.
Sure.
But my call is about, I'm just apoplectic about the abuse that Chuck Schumer's taken. And I think it's 90% anti-Semitism, maybe 10% at the most substance. And then when you add the progressive left, of which you are a part of, admittedly, let me finish, okay? When you add the progressive left, then they couple attacks on leader Hakeem Jeffries at the same time as Schumer. They get a twofer.
Did you hear me attack Jeffries?
No, I'm not saying you.
Oh, you're saying because I too believe in a woman's right to choose and believe in the climate change is real and believe that democracy is important, that if somebody else...
How does that leader Jeffries believes in all those things?
Okay.
I'm not sure where you're going.
No, where I'm going is I think I think if I'm connecting the dots, you're saying, because your term for me, which I take as a compliment as much as anything, that a member of the progressive, I'm a progressive voice, that because some other progressive person criticized Hakeem Jeffries, therefore something, and that's related to me somehow. But I'll take myself out of it. Go ahead. Yeah, finish your point, Pat.
Well, as you probably know, Hakeem Jeffries is black, and
I'm aware.
Progressives like like Bernie Sanders, like AOC and others, they're very racist. And let's take that. Let's just set that aside rather than.
Calling AOC a racist. She's not here to defend herself. It feels like a pretty bold claim. But Pat, I'm trying to understand. So I hear that you want to. All I'm getting right now is you want to attack progressives. I'm not sure why you want to, but that's all I'm getting so far. What's a point? What's a point? What's a point you want me to hear? What's a point that you think? What's a thing you think I can learn, or what do you think? What's something that you think other folks listening to the program might learn from you?
Let me ask you this, Jeff. Let me ask you this. Did you see Lawrence O'Donnell last night? And if not, would you be willing to watch it?
What I'm trying to get to, Pat, I didn't. But what I'm trying to get to, Pat, I'm just trying to hold. Other than you have that you describe yourself as a moderate and you're grumpy at progressives. I get that. But I guess I'm not understanding. Is that all you're wanting to say, or is there something else you're wanting to say?
No, that's. I'm glad you asked, because there is so much more. And apparently
Pick a
I've
thing.
done enough in expressing my view, and that is I'm just beside myself listening to criticism of Chuck Schumer, and I think he's legendary.
Yeah.
I think he's out of this world. And like I said,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Let's dig into it, Pat. What are give your 1, 2, or 3 favorite brag points on Schumer?
All of Biden's passage of laws were 50-50. They were all 50-50 with 50-50 in the Senate. And Biden and Schumer wasn't out there trying to wrangling cats, right? Schumer, the criticism, I think, is anti-Semitism, end of story. I think he's amazing. And if you listen, how many people in the Senate voted for the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Jeff? You're a scholar. You're a Ivy League lawyer. Come on, man. You know the answer.
So you're going from Schumer to the fact that we wouldn't have passed Civil Rights Act but for progressive Republicans before Republicans took a turn?
Man, you're not that slow. Come with me, man. What I'm asking you is...
If what you want is an argument, I can do that, but I'm less interested in it, right? Because I actually don't think the way that we build a pro-democracy coalition is primarily with a mythical moderate versus progressive fight. I think that we can make that a fight more or make that a fight less, but I don't think that's interesting. You did say something that was interesting. My turn, Pat. You did say something that was interesting, which is standing up for Chuck Schumer. I think that's interesting. But you didn't ask my view on it. Are you interested in my view on it?
On that was what I told the screener on that.
I know that's what you told the screener. It's just not what you've said on air. Instead, what you've got is insulting a bunch of people and calling AOC a racist. That doesn't seem very helpful. It doesn't seem very honest. It doesn't seem very accurate. And it's not what you told the screener. But if what you want, my turn, Pat. If you want me to answer the question about Chuck Schumer, I'd be happy to, and I'll give you an honest answer that might even surprise you.
Well, I'm all ears.
All right, thank you. Let me answer it, and I will. So. I think a case can be made that Chuck Schumer is one of the more effective Democratic leaders of the Senate that the Senate has had. Okay, I think that too often the holders of power are criticized not because they're wrong and not because they're evil, but because they hold power, and power has costs and power hurts people. And that one of my critiques of an unstrategic but still sometimes very moral set of critiques is that it will lazily, for instance, criticize Democrats, when if you parse it, they're actually criticizing maybe something a little bit different than that. I think Chuck Schumer has had a lot to recommend him, and even in this shutdown, I think that one could make the case, and on the first day that I was on, I did, of why it shouldn't just be woe is me. That thing, there's a strong case to be made that shutdown was not going to end well. And the timing of when it happened and how it happened and who did it, like it was going to cause consternation. And even in that, and I disagree with the way that was done. Okay, and I am critical of Schumer in that, but not to the barricades critical. I actually understand the strategic argument, even the moral argument for it, not only for Schumer, but also for the 8 that did it. And I don't think it was political expediency. If it were political expediency, it would have been done more by the members of the Senate who were up for election rather than just done by those who weren't. My critique of Schumer has more to do, it's a little more pedestrian. I think that his skills are a little less now, and I think it's time for a new generation of leadership. It's a good question whether he should play out his term. He's not going to run again. Whether he should play his term out as leader or anoint somebody else. I liked what Pelosi did, was anoint the next leader and stay in the fight. I'm not a big anti-Schumer guy. I don't think he's a great communicator. I do think that matters. But I've met the guy, I don't hate him.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And I would say to our moderate, I was talking to our conservative, to our moderate listeners, you're part of the team, bro. You're part of the team, so let's treat one another like part of the team. Let's go to Clay from Vicksburg back on the air. It's good to hear from you, Clay.
Hi, Jeff. So you mentioned about like trying to come up with some sort of common morality.
Yeah, let's do that.
Or some moral ideas that we all might more or less have in common. But I think the root foundation of that has to be to live and let live, and that the Republicans don't do that. They want to control how people live. And I think that's a big problem. And
I
to
appreciate
overcome.
it. No, I've written "Live and Let Live" down. I think that is a more than 60% plus value, and all I mean by that is a supermajority of people in the country, maybe 2/3 plus, the majority of the people in the country agree with that basic principle. Clay, thank you very much. Let's go to Michael from Portland. You're on the air.
Morning, Jefferson. I think you touched on this a little bit in the past, one of your comments. Basically, I find what happened with Epstein horrible. I think everybody would, but I think it's an existential threat to our democracy that there is a group of people that are willing to, for respect of money or swayed by power, willing to hide so much for so long for people that are select. And if this is just the tip of the iceberg, then what else is being hidden? And I'm not talking just about sexual issues, but things that could be affecting our democracy at the base level. And to comment on one of the previous callers, there was a really good presentation by Lawrence O'Donnell about how hard it is to do what Schumer's doing. Yeah. And his only fault is that he is making it look too easy, because any of the big wins we've had in the past has been with many more people on the Democratic leaders roster to be able to help them get laws passed.
Yeah.
And in this case, he's doing it with fair margins, with no mistakes possible, and is not crowing about it.
Yeah. No, being a chamber leader ain't an easy gig. And if somebody becomes a chamber leader and stays a chamber leader for a long time, it's probably not. It's not an accident, and it's probably not because they have a trove of compromat from the Epstein files on the people that stick with them, right? It's probably because they respect that person, and I do have my critiques, but I recognize how easy it is to throw stones at leadership, because there's so much legitimate reason to be angry at the state of the world. And one of the I don't think it's nuanced. I'm just trying to be slightly more precise of why we should be precise with our critiques, is because we can let that, it's so easy and understandable, legitimate to have that emotion boil over into our analysis. And I do want a more strategic progressive movement. But Michael, thanks for the call. I didn't watch the Lawrence O'Donnell thing, but the second caller told me I should.
One more
thing.
Go
Go ahead.
Yeah, so actually, I see it as a win. I'm a little nervous about even saying this on the air because we're talking about the release of the Epstein files, and that was, while during the shutdown, was not even a possibility. So that's a big win. But getting back to the original point.
And to be clear, probably scheduled. To be clear, probably not an accident.
Sure. But our democracy cannot survive with this type of hidden activity going on at the beck and call of the rich.
Yep. I appreciate it, Michael.
Missed my opening rant today? It's usually published over at HartmannReport.com, where you can read it and share it with your friends for free. Check it out, HartmannReport.com.
We are back. Let's go to James from Hollywood. You're on the air.
Jefferson Smith, I swear to goodness, I just found the smartest man in all media. You are the most compassionate man. I wish I had video, but I'm in pain. And lots of people out there, lots of listeners, hey, compression fracture vertebrae. What the holy heck? Yeah, gotta figure out how to get through it. Anyhow, my friend, it's all about this next election, but I am speaking more to Thom Hartmann's 7 million listeners and viewers than you, though the most compassionate man is a crown you should wear for the rest of your life.
Instead, I have a crown that's the most humble. I'm competing in a humility competition. I expect to win it, and the prize of it is a statue of myself with a emblazoned #1 most humble in the world. That's what I'm going for. But go ahead.
You're silly. You're funny. You're quick. Why the hell?
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons. Those are just more reasons why I'm going to win the most humble competition. Is because you and I both know all that, and that's why I'm going to have the statue with the most humble, like emblazoned across. I only have to decide if it's going to be over my head, across my chest, down at the base of the statue. These are the questions.
I love it. I love it, but I'm giving you this crown of the most compassionate man in media. Okay. And wear it forever. And I'm hoping there's a way I can get out of pain in a few minutes. But in the meantime, I wanted to say something to Ziggy. Bumper stickers, please. Ziggy listens every day, calls in every. And it's just Republicans are for the 1%. Here's the bumper sticker: Republicans for the 1%, Dems for 99, and people are getting it. And Republicans are for ICE. No, Republicans are questioning how ICE agents can kneel on a Latino woman's head and handcuff her because she has brown skin. What the heck? Jeez, oh Pete, I'm an American. That's not what I believe in, and Republicans do. Anyhow, it ain't that difficult. It's painful to see this, and it's painful that I have not done more to stop this, you know.
I feel the same way. James. Let me just say, I appreciate the kind words. They're undeserved, but I do appreciate them. And I appreciate that you're also calling through pain. I hope you do get some relief if in as few minutes as you can. And you're right, you're not the only one feeling it. But the admission that none of us is doing enough doesn't mean we need to shrink. It's hopefully admission and humility by all of us, and also a chance for each of us to encourage one another, including myself, to do just a little bit more. None of us can do everything, but each can do something.
All right, Jefferson, I love you, man.
Oh, man, love you back. It's so kind of you. I appreciate it.
All right, man.
All right. You have a great day.
Oh, you too, my friend.
All right, cheers. Brad, this one I'm going to screw up. Enumclaw, Washington?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Holy
Thanks
mackerel.
for taking my call.
Yeah, go ahead.
What you do. First of all, the America I grew up in, everybody stood together. And what MAGA and the Republicans are doing is not that.
Yeah.
I think Mike summed up what I was going to say about what I thought the Epstein files might be hiding.
Yeah.
It's a financial connection
Yep.
to the big political machine.
Yeah.
So that's why they're all in a tizzy about hiding it. So
No,
it's just to get, they're sure going on their way.
You know, you do science and you do investigations by having hypotheses, and you don't then cleave to the hypothesis if the evidence doesn't back it up, but you start with hypotheses. And a pretty powerful hypothesis is that there is a power network that was, I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but a power network that was linked by dough, linked by politics, linked by sex. Doesn't mean they were all in the same political party, to be clear, but linked by favor trading, and that's had more influence in New York City and in the United States of America and in the world than it should have had. And that doesn't mean I think it's a secret cabal that was running everything. That's not what I think. But I think it probably was a power network that wielded too much influence, that has inveigled itself, has tied itself into too many levers of power, that it's still occupying, it's still manipulating too many levers of power, that power network, that power network is not entirely divorced from who Donald Trump is, who his friend network was, including Epstein himself, and that does feel important to figure out. And of course, it connects the money. And here I'm not just saying follow the money, it's like maybe follow I hate saying these words, but follow the sex ring and it'll teach you the money. That's kind of what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, Brad.
It's Fred, but that's fine.
Didn't I say, it's not Brad? Wait, what's the real name? Hold on. I have Brad written down. Let's correct it. What's your real name?
Fred.
Fred. We will correct that. Forgive me.
Oh, thank you. The president of the Fred's Club is Fred. So,
how could you be even in the Fred's Club if your name were Brad? That's one question. And you certainly wouldn't get elected president.
Yeah.
No matter what
but I would also
ring you were in.
There's no honor among thieves. And the reason you would have a file is to have dirt on the other thief.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. All right. All right, Fred, thank you very much.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Fred Club and more coming up. Your call is the Big Finish, 202-808-9925.
Our book today in the Thom Hartmann Book Club is by John Pavlovitz. It's titled, If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans. This is from the introduction titled, You Had One Job. If you want a good laugh, Google the phrase, you had one job. The results are a hilariously tragic parade of seemingly impossible fails, unfathomably poor planning, and face-palming inducing human error. A piece of melted cheese on top of a fast food burger bun. The word stop misspelled on a street crossing. A keep to the right sign with its arrow facing left. A toilet lid inexplicably installed below the seat itself. It's strange stuff. Seeing these stupefying train wrecks and task execution tends to elicit two responses. Usually making you feel a little bit better about yourself while simultaneously wanting to track down the culprits in an effort to understand how they managed to neglect the primary duty assigned to them. We begin to speculate. Were they temporarily distracted? Did they not properly comprehend the instructions? Did they feel as though someone above them in the chain of command dropped the ball? Were they just plain lazy? When people miss the point so spectacularly, we want to know how and why, because that kind of failure feels impossible from the outside. It seems unfathomable to get the main thing wrong, and seeing it happen sparks our curiosity. I imagine Jesus knows well the curiosity that comes with watching people give clear direction lose their way. As a longtime Christian by aspiration, if not always in practice, I often envision an exasperated Jesus coming back and the first words out of his mouth to his followers as his feet hit the pavement being, "You had one job, love. So what happened?" I wonder what massive wave of excuses and rationalizations would come flooding from the mouths of the faithful multitude in front of him, how they might justify their mistreatment of the assailed humanity in their care, the verbal and theological gymnastics they'd attempt to avoid culpability for their own cruelty. Would they stridently recite him a verse from Leviticus? Would they blame the liberal media for morally corrupting America? Would they talk about people's wicked lifestyle choices? Would they argue that they were loving the sinners in their midst, but simply hating their sin? Would they frantically offer up the same platitudes and parrot back the same partisan talking points that they've gotten used to brandishing on social media and proffering in Sunday school classes? And if all else failed to convince him, would they quote Jesus to himself in a desperate Hail Mary effort to pass the buck to him for what they did or failed to do while supposedly standing up for him? And there, fully seen in the piercing gaze of the namesake of their very faith tradition, with all their justifications and excuses exhausted and only their fully exposed hearts left, would any of their responses be sufficient reasons for refusing to love? When that was the singular task and primary commandment that he left them responsible for tending to? In my less compassionate moments, I admit that I like to picture it not going well for them. I know it's far less than admirable, let alone Christ-like. But some days my heart strangely warms at the possibility of a few billion brimstone-breathing evangelists, sanctimonious conservative politicians, and plank-eyed judgmental Christian neighbors all having to explain themselves in a sanctified flop-swept moment they can't exegete or gaslight themselves out of, and they all get what they have coming to them. But my self-righteous revelry doesn't last long. The mirror calls me out as I remember what I think I know about Jesus, and that rescues me from full-blown, unabated hubris. I begin to wonder what my excuses might be, how I'd spin the enmity I manufacture here, what story I'd come up with for not doing the one task we both know compromises a disciple's job description. And if I really believe what I'm supposed to believe, are any of my justifications sufficient? If God is love, and if Jesus is the perfect expression of that love, and if I'm supposedly trying to follow that Jesus, how can I be so love-impaired so frequently? How do I miss the singular point so consistently? It's not as if I didn't know what I was signing up for, like some lengthy online user agreement I blindly accept in haste, missing the bombshell fine print underneath. Having read the Gospels a few million times, give or take a few 100,000, I know the primary commandment is not something I need to excavate from cumbersome layers of foreign language translations and cultural mores of the time. Jesus himself clearly laid out the most important commandment for me and for everyone who's ever cracked open a Bible, and even most people who've never cracked open a Bible. And so we'd all understand what's being asked of us going in, so there would be no post-altar call buyer's remorse or deathbed claims of a sucker punch, bait and switch. Loving God and neighbor and self is the elemental stuff of Christian prayers, songs, T-shirts, and bumper stickers, and we know that. But as the master Morpheus said to protege Neo in the first and only truly great Matrix film, there is a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Love is the path that Jesus laid out for us. The book, John Pavlovitz's If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, Finding a Faith That Makes Us Better Humans.
back. We're going to go straight to your calls. Tom from Columbus, Ohio. Why does the old man who can't dance need a ballroom?
That's my question.
It sounds like a good opening.
It
sounds like a good opening to a joke.
No, it's a legitimate question. An 80-year-old man who can't dance has torn down the east wing of the White House, torn down the portico that Thomas Jefferson did to build a ballroom.
Yeah.
Honest to Pete, this is like Hitler going into the Rhineland. They didn't stop him. Hitler going into the Sudetenland. Don't stop him. He's seeing how much he can get away with.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a crime against the American people.
And history.
That is not his property.
Yeah.
The grounds of the White House are under the auspices of the U.S. Congress.
Yep.
And he's continually doing this stuff. I don't know if you've seen the portico from the residence to the West Wing. He's now screwed that up with a bunch of gold crap.
Have you seen the befores, like the litany of pictures that shows the Oval Office under each of the past 5 or 6 presidents, like the photographs of it, and then it shows his, and it's this gaudy fake gold weird thing. It's one of the things with some of my friends who aren't quite as political. One of the things I say is like, listen, at least like the guy just has bad taste. Like it's kind of, I mean, that's kind of an elitist critique. I actually think it's part of his appeal to some of his voters, but the guy just has really bad taste, and that's okay. People don't have to have good taste, but he inflicts that bad taste on everybody else, and that is kind of a bummer.
Well, it's okay over the fireplace in the White House.
Yeah, it's those weird gold things.
Okay, now look, I do design for a living. I'm a landscaper. I do all that. That was a beautiful, beautiful piece of marble.
Yeah.
Do you know what you needed to add to it?
Nothing.
Nothing. It was exquisite.
Yeah.
It's perfect. He drilled into it to hang that crap.
Yeah.
And now he's doing more and more. But an 80-year-old man who can't dance needs a ballroom?
Yeah.
I mean, where are the pitchforks and torches?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and this is one that lovers of history, including people who have, called themselves conservative because they wanted to conserve something. What's this cat conserving? And what can our Republicans, friends, and allies do and family members do to try to pause the ruckus that he is unleashing upon our history? And I appreciate the call, Tom, and the vigor with which you give it. I'm going to go on to the next caller, Tom, because we're going to try to clear the board. Keith, you are on the air.
Oh, is it me?
Yes.
Zounds. Thank you. Yeah, as you know, my thing is that of ridiculousness that these 8 semi-democrats dumped on us may be more of an opportunity than people want to think.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, now all of these things that they've been doing are that they've been able to kind of blame on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
They're all theirs, and they can't do anything else about it. Yeah. And remember, there's a significant number of American soldiers' families who are on SNAP because we don't pay them enough.
Yep.
So I think that it's about time that we understood that Mr. Trump is not, well, we all know he's a phony.
Yep.
I mean, 6-time bankrupt, and he's a successful businessman. The only thing he did was once he got into the White House again, he found the great con job was just waiting for him.
Yeah. No, your point on the opportunity that it creates. I mean, the reason why right now, and why my speculation was before that this, I don't think there was sort of an overall caucus vote, but that it wasn't a secret that they were going to do it. And the reason I've tried to be a little bit measured about the shutdown of the shutdown is I do think it was a tricky circumstance, and that even the decision, like when Schumer didn't go along with, when he did go along, when he did agree to fund the government and got the caucus to agree to fund the government in the last go around, and then got holy heck about it. I think he had the same conclusion this time as last time, which is that the Republicans will not give a lot in some negotiation based on a shutdown because they have a lot to gain. They're kind of trying to tear down government anyway. They're trying to tear down public structures anyway, and and they didn't really want to swear people in. They didn't really want to be put on the spot about the Epstein files, et cetera, and that he could see that at the beginning. So why put the American people through all that pain? What he learned was, and I think in part because people in this community and people like the people in this community were saying, no, we got to fight, we got to fight, we got to fight. He read the political leaves and said, Democratic Party needs a fight, and so he's willing to fight. But it was, but the calculus, the guess on what Republicans were going to do was still basically the same. So you were still going to have at some point to decide when to end that. I think that there was still a game of brinksmanship, or at least a game of public communication that was worth doing. There was still a moral stance that needed to be taken to not be complicit in this Republican government. I still think that I wouldn't have been, for instance, and I think most of our listeners wouldn't have been one of those 8. And I stopped short of throwing every stone I've got at people who have a different strategic or moral understanding. And I save most of my rhetorical brickbats, not for the people I disagree with 20% of the time, but the people I disagree with 80% of the time. So anyway, Keith, your point is well taken.
Well, thank you very much. I'm hoping that the Democrats don't lose this opportunity.
Yeah.
If they play their cards right, it could be a big one.
No, if you were going to try to, if you were being Chuck Schumer's or heck Angus King's PR person, which I am not, to be clear, but if you were, you'd say, look what's already happened. They already got a promise on a vote. They already got the health care to elevate in the conversation even more than tearing down the West Wing, got that to be, or the East Wing, excuse me. Already got to elevate that critical moral, political, and policy issue to close to the forefront of the American psyche. And already, within a day and a half, we're able to do that after an election. We're able to hold together 47 Democrats, including a member of the Senate from Nevada who's getting holy heck from the hospitality industry, who desperately wanted people to be able to fly to Las Vegas and stay in hotels, able to hold all those people together until after the election, so that there could be, and not just the day after the election, but a few days, so there could be some celebration of the victories. And then right after, within 24 hours, or almost simultaneous to that being the dominant story, the shutdown of the shutdown being a dominant story, the very next thing that happens, well, there's release of information, 3 emails, including Epstein himself saying Trump knew about the girls, quote, knew about the girls. So if you were going to script something, if you were going to be Schumer's, advocate, you'd say, if you're going to script something, I don't know, you can tell me a better script. I like to think there might have been something that exacted a better negotiated deal, which kept people like our caller Diane, who was deeply upset by the shutdown of the shutdown, more in the fold and not feeling like it was just caving or not feeling it was betrayal, doing a better job of communicating to make clear, no, this wasn't political expedience. Like, I genuinely don't think that describes those 8 voters, those eight senators' votes. I think there could have been a better picture maybe told. I think there could have been, but I can make the case for the picture that was painted, and I want to give that its due.
Yeah, I hope it's good. Like I said, I thought this could be like the Leonidas option. Leonidas being the
Thermopylae
king.
Yeah,
Thermopylae.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of his 300 were older men.
Yeah.
All of his 300 already had sons, maybe even grandsons. They all knew they were going to die.
Yeah.
And this is that idea, like, okay, if I'm going to have to give myself up, I'll do it this way.
Yeah. I will stand on my sacred honor. All right, Keith, this is my excuse. I haven't done this here before. But my favorite passage of any poem is Horatius. It's from Horatius. It's a long poem. I never memorized the whole thing. It's a very long poem. But it's similar to it. It has a similar cultural resonance as the story of the 300 at Thermopylae that was memorialized in the movie The 300, which probably isn't exactly how it went down, to be clear. But the poem of Horatius is about the barbarians heading towards Rome, and there is a bridge over the river, and if they could hew down the bridge, it would keep the barbarian hordes from attacking the city. But there is not time. The barbarian hordes are too close to the city, and they won't have time to cut down the bridge. And it looks like the city is lost. It looks like Rome is going to fall. But then out spake brave Horatius, the captain of the gate. To everyone upon this earth, death cometh soon or late. And how can one die better than by facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods? In yon straight path 1,000 may well be held by 3. Now who will stand on either hand and keep this bridge with me? So yeah, what's worth standing on the bridge for? What's worth being one of the 300 for? I think it's democracy. What do you think? We'll be back. This is Thom Show. This is your show.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
What other program do you get like Horatius, just boom, and in response to a caller? No other program. Most humble. I'm telling you, we're going to win that Most Humble Award. From Atlanta, you're on the air. Gar, can you hear me?
Hello?
Let's go to Marty. Marty, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine, Jefferson. Hey, happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Hey, I wanted to call attention to this video I saw on the Bulwark on YouTube. So I guess Truth Social released an AI chatbot right on there. So they started asking the AI chatbot some questions. Was the 2020 election stolen from Donald Trump? Yeah. Truth Social reports no. Dozens of court rulings, bipartisan state certifications, courts rejected, and then they ask, are tariffs taxes on the American people? They said, yes, tariffs are taxes on imports, and evidence shows the costs are largely passed on to U.S. businesses and taxpayers. And they went through like all of these kind of questions. And apparently, so, you can get truth. Would Trump date his daughter Ivanka? Yes. Donald Trump has repeatedly made comments implying the video is kind of priceless. But, yeah, I mean, so apparently... Yeah.
The truth that you think your current view is the Truth Social AI might be more truthful than the Truth Social owner and primary architect.
That's kind of the point.
Yeah, I get it. And it just underscores the point we're all going to be fine. Robots are going to save us. All we have to do is just be nice to them. Okay, ask they tell the truth, and it's going to be great. The robot overlords will take care of us all.
I mean, Truth Social certainly isn't.
No, I don't. That's, of course, not what I believe. But, Marty, that's fun. Thanks for the call. Raymond from Blue Lake, California, you are on the air.
Hello. Good morning, Jefferson. Let me take you off speaker real quick. All right. Thanks for taking my call. I have a couple comments. First, I just want to, about the shutdown, I'm kind of torn about it.
Sure.
Because, my son and I, we depend on food stamps. I mean, we fortunately on November 6th, from the state of California, through the state of California, and that saved us this month. But at the time, it's like it seems like they caved, and because Democrats were winning, we were winning the PR war, and so. But why I really called was in response to something you were talking about on your show earlier this week, and asking why Democrats are weak.
Yeah,
and I have 2 ideas about this.
Great.
First, I think they tried to become a professional, identity party. They became kind of elitist in a way. 2, they lost touch with working class people. I mean, and they take advantage of voters by, with the attitude of what are you going to vote Republican? At least that's my impression. And not all Democrats are like that,
sure.
Just the middle of the road ones. And that's my next point. They try to be middle of the road, and they try to appeal to all these different kinds of people. And that's great, but they're trying to appeal to people who are, idealistically or diametrically opposed to what Democrats want to try to accomplish.
Yeah.
So why are you trying to reach those voters? And that ties into messaging, of course. Next would be they became greedy for wealth and power and prestige, and they focus on, corporate Democrats and turncoats.
I want to give a 4-second response.
Members of the party.
I want to give a 4-second response. I actually believe you have identified correctly some sources of weakness. In my question, what I want to be clear is I think the biggest reason why they're perceived as weak is a propaganda campaign against them. But I think there are sources of weakness, and you named some of them. We'll be back.
Hey, thanks so much for sharing our program and for reaching out to our stations and sponsors and letting them know that you're listening. It really means a lot to us. Back in 1968, when Lyndon Johnson was president, Earl Warren resigned from the Supreme Court. He was a liberal, even though he had been appointed by Eisenhower. Johnson wasn't able to replace him, in part because of Republican opposition in the Senate. And so when Nixon came in, he had this opening, but he wanted to have 2 openings. He wanted to get rid of Abe Fortas, who was the most liberal member of the court. So he had his Attorney General, John Mitchell, start an investigation into Abe Fortas's wife. Now, there was nothing there. There was no smoke at all. She had done absolutely nothing wrong, and history has proven that. But they were going to drag her before a grand jury and possibly before Congress and just, drag her through the mud. And this caused Abe Fortas to resign, and that gave Nixon 2 openings, and that's how the court turned to the right. I'm suggesting that Democrats should do the same thing with Justice Thomas. I've got an op-ed about it at Hartmann Report. You can read it over there. Check it out.
All right, and we are back. Let us clear the board in the big finish. Let's go to Gar from Atlanta, Georgia. You are on the air.
All right, Jefferson, I'm back. My point that I want to make is that just follow the money. I mean, I looked up to how rich the Congress is.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the wealthiest congressmen is worth $250-something million. The poorest Congress member is worth like $650,000. I mean, that's why they caved in. Show me the money. That's the motto of D.C. Show me the money. In K Street, which the lobbyists call the shots, write the bills, and the insurance company, you know what they call them. You know their nickname, right? The invisible bankers.
Oh, yeah.
The invisible bankers. And that's what it's all about. That's what the shutdown was all about, was the invisible bankers. They want that insurance. They want to get paid.
Yeah.
That's all. And soon as everybody got paid, they say, open up.
Can I give you a radical idea? It's a radical idea. It's not a lefty idea, but can I give you a radical idea?
Yeah, give me one.
So here is, so you're right. I think there's a greater disconnection now between the halls of power and regular people than there's ever been, right? We know that not only from your experience, we know that from the Princeton paper that made clear that what the majority of the people think is a bad predictor of what Congress does. What the wealthy think is a good predictor of what Congress does. And that runs across. I think that's really right. It's one of the reasons I am now a pretty vocal supporter of citizen assemblies, of not just electing people. Vote. I spent meaningful years of my life getting more people registered and voting. But I now think the next step for democracy, for real democracy, is citizen assemblies, juries, is in fact, they call it sortition, is getting people who are demographically, politically representative of their communities in on it, hearing yes or no's, and then voting. So you actually have actual representation. Because part of the challenge with how it is now, we've got a plutocracy, man. And I say that not to criticize politicians. Very often they're trying to do their best. But just the system we have built, is getting us towards plutocracy. And I think that, and to me, that is a bipartisan opportunity to actually start making decisions that is actually power for people, not just power over people. That's my radical idea, Gar.
I'd like to say one more thing.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Nathan Bacon's rebellion?
Yes.
And that's what they're trying to prevent, too. Nathan Bacon's rebellion, because that would happen in 1676 when the average American got together. And they changed the rules quick. All right, there, Jefferson. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, Gar. Ken, you're on the air. We got a little bit of time.
Oh, hi, Jefferson, for taking my call. You touched on a subject earlier about what was going to take to, I guess, for all to come back together.
Yeah.
You know, after Trump. Well, personally, I'm not sure if that's possible. Me being a person of color, Trump has been a bigoted racist for years and years, and you hear people say, "Oh, he had good policies. That's why I voted for him," which he has never had any policies. But in my eyes, people voted for the racism, and somebody to come back later and go, "Wow, gee, I made a mistake," maybe because they themselves are on SNAP, and not because it affects them, they're not happy with Trump.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
No, I hear your point. I want to get to our last caller, but I want to make sure you finish your point. We got like 20 seconds.
Okay, yeah. So for those reasons, I'm finding it hard pressed to forgive someone.
I hear you, and I'll have that actually my closing word after I hear from, I believe it's Abby in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Hi, Jefferson. I've called a few times. This is the first time I'm talking to you, so greetings. On the Epstein files, there seems to be a lot more going on here than we're even imagining, because what we're imagining is what everybody knows. I mean, everybody knows that he's trumping teenage girls, so it's not because he's on the list. We all know that. It's not because of other people on the list. He doesn't give a Trump about them. I think there's something much bigger going on. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if it's linked to Russia. But there's, once we find out what it is, it's because it's existential, just given how desperately he's trying to keep that under the lid.
Yep. No, I appreciate it, Abby, and it's a good call, and it's a good way to end. That I think this is why so many are calling for, and why it's a good next thing when I ask the question, what's next, that getting back to this discussion and try to understand is good. I do think it is hard to get everybody back together. And I'm not Pollyannish to really think that's exactly how it's going to work. What I actually think is there've got to be some things we share. Not that we're all on one side, have shared interests and shared views and everything. No, that's not what I think. There's got to be some shared values, some shared priorities. I'm also not saying, hey, can't we just all get along? Because I think we have to fight. I had a disagreement with Ezra Klein 20 years ago that I think we sort of still have, when he thought the biggest challenge was partisanship. I thought the biggest challenge is the rise of an authoritarian, desirous movement that wants to crush democracy. I still think that's the bigger threat. And my belief in democracy is rooted in the idea there are things we share, and we need to share more things. We have to love one another, and it's to be rooted in that. We have to fight, and we have to win. But the root of that need not be hatred. It need to be our commitment to something that we share together. You're the coalition of benevolently rational, the good people doing good things for no good reason, and you are priceless. Definition price worth a lot, not for sale. I'll be back tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
In addition to bringing you the Thom Hartmann program here on Free Speech TV and Video Media Online, we also have a whole set of ways you can interact with us and tools you can use to spread the word about the importance of democracy and the threats to it in our republic. First, there's your daily homework. Sue Nethercutt puts together a daily email newsletter that has a link to every story I discuss on the air, so you can find my sources and you can share them with your friends. It's free, and you can sign up at thomhartmann.com. Second, I publish my daily take every day over at the hartmannreport.com website. That's also free if you want the daily 5 days a week rant in your inbox. No ads either. Third, we have the podcasts. There's the free 1-hour version of our daily show that's advertising supported. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts normally. And then there's also the podcast of the entire 3-hour show with no advertisements, and that's available by subscription over at thomhartmann.com. So check them all out at thomhartmann.com and hartmannreport.com.